The waitress who fooled the mafia and became the one they feared. She was nobody. A waitress whose name nobody bothered to learn, whose hands trembled under the weight of trays heavier than her dignity. Until the night, a man with ice in his eyes slid an envelope across her table and whispered 7 words that would rewrite her entire life. Pretend to be mine for one night. One dinner. One lie. One room full of killers who smelled fear like blood in water. She said yes, and walked straight into the lion's den wearing someone else's skin. If you're watching this story right now, stay with me until the very end. Because what Nina Carter did next shocked even the most dangerous man in the city. Hit that like button and drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled. Let's begin. The rain in Belmont City never fell gently. It came down in sheets, the kind that soaked through cheap coats and turned the sidewalks into black mirrors reflecting the neon signs above. Nina Carter pulled the collar of her uniform jacket tighter against her neck as she stepped off the bus 3 blocks from Rossi's Italian Grill. She was 20 minutes early for her shift, which meant 20 minutes she wouldn't be paid for, but Marco docked wages for anything less than 15 minutes of setup, and Nina couldn't afford to lose another $1 this month. Her sneakers squeaked on the wet tile as she pushed through the back door of the restaurant. The kitchen smelled of garlic and scorched butter, the same smell that had clung to her hair for 2 years now. She swore sometimes she could taste it in her dreams. "You're late," Marco grunted from behind the line, not looking up. "I'm 10 minutes early." "You're late in spirit." Nina didn't argue. Arguing with Marco was like arguing with a brick wall that occasionally shouted in Italian. She tied her apron, pinned her hair back, and checked her reflection in the warped metal of the refrigerator door. Her face looked tired. It had looked tired for a long time now. 26 years old, and the hollows under her eyes had started to feel permanent. "Section 4 tonight," Marco said. "Private booth in the back. Don't mess it up." "Section 4? Nina frowned. Section 4 was the reserved corner, the one with the brass-trimmed booth that sat empty most nights. "Who's in Section 4? Marco finally looked at her. His expression was strange, tight around the mouth, cautious around the eyes. "A guest. A very important guest. You serve him, you smile, you don't ask questions, you don't stare. You understand?" "Marco, I always understand." "No, this time you listen harder than that." Something cold moved through her chest. She nodded once and walked out onto the floor. The dining room was half full. The usual Tuesday crowd of regulars and couples too young to realize the wine list was overpriced. But her eyes kept drifting toward the back booth, where the brass lamp had been lit, a signal Marco reserved for guests he feared more than he respected. She'd only seen that lamp lit twice before in 2 years. Both times, men in dark suits had come and gone without speaking above a whisper, and Marco had spent the rest of the week flinching at loud noises. She carried water to table 6. She refilled bread at table 9. And all the while, she kept one eye on the front door. He arrived at 8 minutes past 8. The rain seemed to pause when the door opened, as though the storm itself had stepped aside. He was tall, taller than most men, with shoulders that filled the doorway in a way that had nothing to do with his suit, though the suit was impeccable. Charcoal gray, tailored to the millimeter, the kind of fabric that only looked simple because it cost more than her rent. His hair was dark, combed back with a severity that matched his jaw, and his eyes, even from across the room, Nina felt them. Gray. Not cold exactly, but still. Still the way a lake is still before something beneath it moves. 2 men entered behind him and took positions near the door without being told. They didn't sit. They didn't order. They just stood there like matching bookends, and every regular in the restaurant suddenly became very interested in their pasta. Marco hurried out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel that hadn't been dirty. "Mr. Vance, an honor. Please. Your booth is ready." Vance. Nina's hand tightened on the edge of her tray. Even she knew that name. Anyone who'd lived in Belmont City longer than a summer knew the name Vance. The family had fingerprints on half the docks, a whisper in every city hall office, and a long, bloody history written in rumors that nobody repeated above a mumble. Dominic Vance, the one they said took over 3 years ago, after his father died in a way that nobody in the papers wanted to describe. And he was sitting in her section. She watched him slide into the booth with the ease of a man who had never, in his adult life, worried about whether a chair would hold him. He didn't look at a menu. He didn't look at the wine list. He placed his hands flat on the table, one over the other, and waited.
"Nina," Marco hissed, appearing beside her. His face had gone the color of raw dough. "Go. Now. Water. Bread. Smile. Do not, Nina, do not ask him what he wants to drink. He drinks Barolo. Red. 97 if we have it, and we have it. Go." "Marco, I don't take a... Go." She went.
The walk from the kitchen to that booth was the longest 20 feet of her life. She felt every eye in the restaurant on her back, and then on her shoulders, and then on her hands, which were shaking just enough to rattle the water pitcher. She kept her chin up. She kept her steps steady. She had served governors, television actors, a retired general who'd cried into his minestrone. She could serve a man in a suit. She reached the booth. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Rossi's." Her voice came out level. Thank God. "Can I start you with water and a glass of the Barolo?" He looked up. And Nina Carter, who had spent 2 years perfecting the art of being invisible, felt herself seen, not glanced at. Seen. His gaze moved across her face like he was memorizing it, not with heat, not with interest, but with the careful attention of a man who assessed every piece on a board before he moved. "Sit down," he said. She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Sit down, Miss Carter." Her name. He'd said her name. She hadn't told him her name. She wasn't wearing a name tag. Marco had called her Nina from across the room, but nobody called her Carter. Nobody. Her mouth had gone dry. "Sir, I'm working. I can't—" "Your manager will not object." His voice was low, unhurried, almost gentle in its certainty. "Please, 5 minutes. Then you can go back to your shift and no one will have lost anything." Across the dining room, Marco was staring at her with the expression of a man watching his own funeral. He gave her a tiny, desperate nod. Nina set the water pitcher down on the edge of the booth and slid in opposite him. Her apron bunched awkwardly. She was suddenly very aware of the stain near her collar. Tomato, from a dropped plate 2 hours earlier. She pressed her hand over it. "You don't have to hide it," he said. "Hide what?" "Whatever you're hiding." She looked up. His eyes had something almost like amusement in them, though none of it touched his mouth. "Mr. Vance," Dominic. "I don't think I should be calling you Dominic." "Then don't call me anything. Listen." She listened. There was nothing else to do. "I'm told you're reliable," he said. "I'm told you've worked here 2 years. You've never missed a shift. You don't gossip. You don't steal. And last March you gave a $20 tip back to an elderly woman who left it by mistake." He tilted his head slightly. "Is any of that wrong? Is any of that wrong?" "No," she said. "No, it's all right. But Mr. Vance, I don't understand what— I have a dinner on Saturday night." He said it the way other men said I have an appointment, as if it were ordinary. "A family dinner, my grandmother's estate, outside the city. It's important to me that I attend it with a woman on my arm. The woman I was supposed to bring is no longer suitable. I need a replacement. Someone the family has never seen, someone they won't recognize, someone who can play a role for one evening." Nina stared at him. "You want me to—" She started to laugh, and the laugh came out wrong, jagged. "I'm sorry. Are you asking me to pretend to be your girlfriend? I'm offering you a job. Mr. Vance, I'm a waitress. I'm aware. I don't know which fork goes with what. I don't know how to talk to people like that. I've never even been to an estate. You will be prepared." "Prepared how?" "A woman will come to your apartment Thursday morning. She will teach you everything you need to know before Saturday evening. Clothing, manners, conversation, history. 6 lessons. You'll memorize a cover story we've already built. By the time you arrive on Saturday, nobody at that table will suspect you aren't exactly what I say you are." The breath had gone out of her. She tried to pull it back. "And what do you say I am?" "A woman I've been seeing quietly for 4 months. A gallery assistant in the arts district. Educated, but from modest circumstances. It's a story that makes sense. It's a story that insults no one important and impresses no one useless." His gaze held hers. "Your name will still be Nina. That makes the lie easier to carry." "And why are you—" She stopped, swallowed, tried again. "Why would you need to lie to your own family?" For the first time, something moved behind his eyes. Not warmth, not softness, something closer to weariness. "Miss Carter," he said, "that's not a question you're being paid to ask. I haven't agreed to be paid. $50,000, cash, half before Saturday, half after." The room went quiet in her ears. $50,000. She made $23,000 a year before tips. She owed $9,000 in medical bills from her mother's last hospital stay. Her rent was 3 weeks late. The heat in her apartment had stopped working in February, and she'd been sleeping in 2 sweaters because the landlord said it was a tenant issue. $50,000 was not money. $50,000 was oxygen. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Why me?" she said finally. "Out of every woman in this city, why are you sitting in a diner booth across from a waitress?" "Because you're nobody," he said. It hit her like cold water. She thought about being offended. She thought about standing up and walking away, thought about throwing the water pitcher at him, thought about everything a woman with more money and less exhaustion might do. Instead, she sat very still, because it wasn't a cruel answer. It wasn't even wrong. It was, in fact, the first truly honest thing anyone had said to her in a long time. "Nobody knows your face," he continued. "Nobody knows your history. You have no social presence to speak of. You won't accidentally be photographed next to someone's cousin. You have no enemies because you have no power." "That's not an insult, Miss Carter. That's a resume." "And disposable," she said quietly. "That's what you mean, isn't it?" He didn't deny it. "If this goes badly," she said, "you want someone no one will look for." "If this goes badly," he said, "I want someone who can walk away without a tail," which is the same thing, phrased more kindly. She laughed again, but this time it was softer, bitter. "You don't do kind, do you?" "I try not to insult anyone by pretending otherwise." She looked down at her hands. Cracked knuckles from the dish sink. A scar on her thumb from a broken wine glass last Christmas. Fingernails bitten down to the quick. These weren't the hands of a gallery assistant. These were the hands of a woman who had spent her 20s outrunning her own bills. "What happens," she said, "if someone figures out I'm lying?" A pause. "I would protect you to the limit of what is possible," he said. "I cannot promise more than that, and I won't insult you by promising more than that." It was, she realized, the most reassuring thing he could have said, because it was the only thing that sounded true. "I need to think," she said. "You have until tomorrow night. After that, I'll find someone else, and we won't speak again." "Mr. Vance." "Dominic." "Mr. Vance," she repeated, more firmly. "If I say no, will anything happen to me?" His gray eyes held hers steadily. "No. Nothing will happen to you. You'll never see me again. You'll finish your shift, you'll go home, you'll keep serving tables, and one day you'll convince yourself this conversation was a dream. That's a promise I can keep." She believed him. She didn't know why, but she believed him. He slid a plain white card across the table. No name, no logo, just a phone number, printed in black. "Call this number with your answer. Do not save it. Do not mention it to anyone. If you say yes, a car will come for you at 9 on Thursday morning." He stood. He was taller than she'd realized. His shadow fell across the whole table. "The Barolo," he said. "I'll pass on tonight. Tell your manager it was my decision, not yours." He paused. "And Miss Carter?" "Yes?" "You served table 7 a bottle of mineral water an hour ago and forgot to bill it. The woman in the blue cardigan. Fix that before your shift ends. Your manager is the type of man who punishes mistakes he didn't make." And then he walked out, into the rain, his 2 silent bookends falling in step behind him, and the door closed, and the restaurant exhaled all at once, like a held breath. Nina sat alone in the booth for several seconds, staring at the card. She didn't remember putting it in her pocket. She didn't sleep that night. Her apartment was a 1-bedroom walk-up above a laundromat on Kessler Avenue, and the dryers below her floor made a rhythmic thumping that she had once learned to ignore. Tonight it sounded like a second heartbeat, louder than her own. She sat on her bed in her pajamas with the card in front of her on the blanket. 10 digits. Black ink. It might as well have been a loaded gun. She picked up her phone. She put it down. She picked it up again. She thought about her mother. 2 years dead now, and Nina still couldn't say her name out loud without something cracking in her chest. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to keep Nina in school. Her mother had died in a hospital bed attached to tubes that cost more per hour than Nina made in a month. And Nina was still paying for those tubes. Still paying. Still paying. $50,000 would end that. $50,000 would let her breathe for the first time in 2 years. But it would also put her at a dinner table full of people who ate women like her for sport. She thought about her father, though there was less to think about there. He'd left when she was 11. Her mother had never said a bad word about him out loud, which Nina understood now was its own kind of statement. He was alive somewhere, probably. She didn't know. She didn't want to know. She thought about Marco. She thought about Section 4. She thought about the way Marco's face had gone white. She thought about the way Dominic Vance had looked at her. Not like a man looking at a woman. Like a man looking at a tool, deciding whether it would hold up under pressure. That should have offended her. It didn't. There was something almost restful about being seen clearly, even if what was being seen wasn't flattering. At 3 in the morning, she picked up her phone and typed the number. She didn't press call. Not yet. She thought about walking into that estate on Saturday. She thought about a room full of people who had grown up with money the way she had grown up with worry. She thought about being looked at, judged, tested. She had been judged and tested her whole life by people who didn't even know they were doing it. Customers who snapped their fingers, managers who called her honey, a landlord who still asked her, every time she paid her rent, whether her boyfriend was going to help her out. She had survived all of that. She had learned how to fold her face into nothing while she did it. Maybe she thought that was a skill. Maybe that was what he had seen. At 3:17 in the morning, she pressed call. The line rang twice. "Miss Carter," his voice, exactly the way it had sounded 6 hours ago, as though he had been sitting by the phone or as though time did not touch him the way it touched other people. Her mouth was dry. "Yes," she said. "Yes, what?" "Yes, I'll do it." A pause. "Car at 9, Thursday morning," he said. "Thank you, Miss Carter." "Mr. Vance." "Yes? What happens to me if someone gets hurt?" A longer pause this time. She could hear him breathing, slow and level, on the other end of the line. "Sleep, Miss Carter," he said. "You'll need it." The line went dead. She sat in the dark with the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to the dryer's thud below her floor, and understood, with a clarity that surprised her, that she had just signed a contract she did not know the full terms of, and that she had done it anyway. Thursday morning came faster than she expected. The car that pulled up in front of the laundromat at 9 sharp was black, long, and quiet in a way that expensive things always were. Nina came out in jeans and her lace-stained sweater, carrying nothing but a purse and a nervous stomach. A driver in a dark suit opened the back door for her without speaking. Inside the car, she wasn't alone. The woman sitting across from her was perhaps 40, with ash-blonde hair pulled into a low knot and the kind of posture that came from years of being told to sit up straight. She wore a cream blouse and navy slacks and a single gold chain at her throat. Her face was pleasant. Her eyes were not. "Miss Carter," she said, "my name is Eleanor. I'm here to help you not die on Saturday." Nina blinked. "Excuse me?" "A joke, mostly." Eleanor smiled, thin and precise. "Sit. We have 4 days and a great deal of ground to cover. Please understand from this moment forward that I am not your friend. I am your instructor. If I am harsh, it is because the DeLuca family will be harsher, and I would like you to be ready for them." The DeLuca, Bianca DeLuca specifically. She is the woman you are replacing in Mr. Vance's life. She was his fiancée until 4 months ago. The end of their engagement was not quiet. She will be at the dinner on Saturday. She will hate you on sight, and she will try, with every tool at her disposal, to prove that you are a fraud. Eleanor opened a leather folder. "Your job is to make her fail. Shall we begin?" Nina stared at her. "He didn't mention an ex-fiancée." "He wouldn't have. It's irrelevant to whether you succeed." Eleanor tapped the folder. "Your cover story. Memorize it tonight. Tomorrow I will test you. The day after, I will test you again. By Saturday afternoon, if I do my job correctly, you will be able to recite this story backwards in your sleep." The car glided through morning traffic. Nina took the folder with fingers that had gone cold. "Your name is still Nina Carter. That stays. The rest changes. You grew up in Millbrook, Connecticut. Your mother was a schoolteacher who passed away 2 years ago from cancer. Keep as much truth as possible. Lies anchored in truth survive better. Your father lives abroad and is not in contact, which is also convenient and truthful enough. You studied art history at a small liberal arts college, Whitmore, in upstate New York. We have selected Whitmore because it has no notable alumni who would be present Saturday. You graduated with honors. You now work at the Harrow Gallery in the Arts District. The gallery is real. Your employment there is not, but if anyone calls, it will be confirmed.
Nina turned a page. There was a photograph of a building she had never seen before, a resume with her name on it, a college transcript. You've been seeing Dominic since November, Eleanor continued. You met at a charity auction. He outbid you for a painting, and you told him loudly that he had terrible taste. He enjoyed this. It's the kind of story people remember because it sounds too small to invent. Eleanor's mouth curled. It is, of course, entirely invented.
Has anyone ever told you you're frightening? Nina said. Several. Usually the ones I like. Nina nearly smiled. She didn't let herself. Now, Eleanor said, let's talk about your hands. My hands? You'll need to do something about them. The calluses, the nails. A gallery assistant does not have waitress hands. Saturday morning, you'll sit with a woman named Celeste for 3 hours. She will fix what can be fixed. What can't, you'll cover. Eleanor's gaze softened fractionally. Don't take it personally. A disguise is only as strong as its weakest seam. I'm not taking it personally, Nina lied. The car turned onto a quiet street. Eleanor flipped the folder closed. One last thing, Miss Carter. Before we go any further. Yes? Have you asked yourself why Mr. Vance needs a girlfriend at this dinner? He said his ex was no longer suitable. That's the reason he gave. It isn't the reason. Eleanor's voice had dropped, very slightly. I'm going to tell you something he hasn't. Not because I'm disloyal, because you deserve to know what kind of room you are walking into. May I? Nina nodded. Her throat was tight. The Vance family, Eleanor said, is in the middle of a succession war. Dominic's uncle, Cesare Vance, believes Dominic is unfit to lead. Cesare has spent the last year building support among the older members of the family, using the argument that Dominic is unstable, unattached, and incapable of producing an heir. Bianca De Luca was to be his answer to that argument. When the engagement collapsed, Cesare used it as ammunition. See? He cannot even hold a wife. This Saturday's dinner is the moment Dominic must appear stable, partnered, and in control, or he loses the family's backing. Nina's hand tightened on the folder. So I'm not just playing a role, she said. I'm a piece of evidence. You're the argument that Dominic Vance is in command of his life. You walking into that dining room, on his arm, smiling, being charming, being real to every person who looks at you. That is the argument. Eleanor's eyes were very steady. If you fail to make that argument, Mr. Vance does not simply lose a dinner. He loses the family. And men who lose the family in rooms like that do not often walk out of them. Nina was quiet for a long moment. You're telling me, she said, that if I mess this up, he dies. I'm telling you, Eleanor said, that the cost of failure is larger than Mr. Vance made it sound, and that you should know this before you agree to continue. I already agreed. You can still walk away. You will not be punished. I will personally ensure it. You have my word. Nina thought about that. She thought about the $50,000 she had not yet touched. She thought about a man who, whatever else he was, had looked her in the eye in a diner booth and told her plainly that she was nobody. That was the cruelest thing anyone had ever said to her. It was also the only honest job offer she had ever received. I'm staying, she said. Eleanor studied her for a long moment, and something in her face changed. Not respect exactly, recognition, as though she had been watching to see whether Nina would flinch, and Nina had not flinched, and this had surprised her. Very well, Eleanor said. Then let's make you dangerous. The next 3 days disappeared. Nina learned which fork was for fish, and which was for salad, and which was for the course nobody in Belmont City actually ate anymore, but which the Vance family served anyway because tradition was a weapon they used against outsiders. She learned that you do not hold a wine glass by the bowl, that you do not butter your entire roll at once, that you do not ask the waitstaff any question that begins with the word sorry. She learned the names of 6 cousins, 4 aunts, and 1 grandmother. She learned who was married to whom, who had betrayed whom, who was suspected of what, and whose names were never spoken above a murmur because to speak them loudly was, in certain rooms, a declaration of war. She learned Bianca De Luca. Eleanor had brought a photograph. Nina sat with it for a long time. Bianca was beautiful in the way that the moneyed were beautiful. Bone structure that had been polished by good food and good dentistry across 3 generations. Dark hair, cut sharp at the jaw. Eyes the color of something that had never had to want for anything. In the photograph, she was laughing at something off camera, and even the laugh looked calculated. "She will try to make you cry," Eleanor said. "She's very good at it. She will find the thing you are most ashamed of, and she will say it out loud at a table of 30 people. When she does, you have 3 seconds to respond. Longer than 3 seconds, and you have lost. Shorter than that, and you look rehearsed. 3 seconds. Breathe in, breathe out, speak." "What do I say?" Nina asked. "Whatever you say, it must not be defensive. Defending yourself is admitting guilt. Instead, you will turn her own weapon against her. You will agree, lightly, with whatever she has said, and then you will add something that makes the room laugh at her expense. This is the only thing she cannot survive. Bianca De Luca can survive anything except being laughed at." "I'm not a funny person." "You don't need to be funny. You need to be faster than her. Quickness and cruelty are not the same thing, but they sound alike, and a room like that cannot tell the difference." By Friday night, Nina had not slept more than 4 hours in any one stretch. Her apartment was filled with note cards. Her mirror was covered in reminders. Her hands had been scrubbed and filed and moisturized until they almost didn't look like her own anymore. And when she caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror, with her hair up and her posture corrected and her face tilted just so, she sometimes didn't recognize the woman looking back. She was terrified. She was also, and this surprised her, a little bit exhilarated. She had spent so long being nobody that the act of becoming someone, even a fake someone, even a someone invented by men with agendas she didn't fully understand, felt like standing up for the first time after a long illness. Her legs were shaky, but her legs were under her. Saturday morning came. Celeste, the 3-hour woman, arrived at 7. She did not speak much. She did things to Nina's skin and hair and nails that Nina had not imagined were possible outside of magazines. When she was finished, she held up a mirror, and Nina looked at her own face and did not recognize it at all. "You look expensive," Celeste said. "That is the goal, expensive and unbothered. Anyone can look beautiful. Not everyone can look unbothered. Practice the face." Nina practiced the face. At 4 in the afternoon, a garment bag arrived. Inside was a dress. It was midnight blue, long-sleeved, floor-length, with a neckline that sat at her collarbone and not 1 centimeter lower. It was the most modest and the most expensive piece of clothing Nina had ever touched. There was a note pinned to the hanger. "Blue, because no one at the table will be wearing it. You will be the only one. Remember that you chose to be there. D." She read the note 3 times. Something in her chest moved. At 6:30, the car came. The driver was the same silent man from Thursday. In the back seat, Eleanor was waiting, in a plain gray suit, with one hand folded over the other in her lap. "Breathe," Eleanor said. Nina breathed. "Tonight, you are not Nina Carter, the waitress. Tonight, you are Nina Carter, the gallery assistant, and you have been in love with Dominic Vance for 4 months, and you are about to meet his family for the first time. You are nervous, but not frightened. You are charming, but not eager. You are warm to him, but not desperate. And above all, Miss Carter, you remember that these people have done nothing in their lives that you have not survived in smaller form 100 times already." "What do you mean?" Nina whispered. Eleanor looked at her. Her face was softer than it had been all week. "I mean that being cut down by a stranger is not new to you. It has simply, until tonight, been poorly dressed. Tonight it will be wearing pearls. That is the only difference." The car moved through the wet streets of Belmont City, past the laundromat where Nina still technically lived, past the restaurant where Nina had not shown up for a shift in 4 days, past the hospital where her mother had died 2 years ago, and out into the countryside, where the road narrowed and the streetlights disappeared and the dark closed in around them like a curtain. Nina watched the city shrink in the rear window. She did not know, yet, what she was walking into. She did not know yet that the cousin sitting 3 chairs down from her would be holding a knife at his brother's throat by the end of the night. She did not know that Bianca DeLuca would corner her in a marble hallway with words sharp enough to cut bone, and that Nina, quiet, tired, invisible Nina, would cut back harder and would watch, for the first time in her life, a rich woman flinch. She did not know that a rival family would arrive uninvited at the dessert course, or that she would improvise a lie so smoothly that even Dominic would stare at her across the table as though he were seeing her for the first time. She did not know that the fake hand on her arm would tighten, at one point, into something that felt, briefly, not fake at all. She did not know any of that. All she knew was that she was wearing a dress worth more than her car, sitting next to a woman who frightened her, on her way to a house full of people who would, if she flinched wrong, bury her somewhere no one would ever find. The road climbed. Through the trees she could see the estate now. Windows lit gold, stone walls, a long gravel drive curving up toward a front door that, from here, looked like a mouth. Eleanor reached over. Very briefly, she squeezed Nina's hand. "Remember," she said, 3 seconds. Breathe in. Breathe out. Speak." The car stopped at the front steps. Nina took one long breath. She looked at her own reflection in the darkened window. The woman with the corrected posture, the quieted hands, the blue dress, the unreadable face. And she did not look away until she was sure the woman looking back was someone she could pretend to be. Then she put her hand on the door handle, and she opened it. The gravel crunched under her heel the moment she stepped out, and that small, ordinary sound almost undid her. It was the last familiar thing she would hear for hours. After that it would be crystal, and laughter, and silk dragging across marble, and voices pitched so carefully that every word would feel like a needle searching for the softest part of her. Dominic was waiting at the top of the stone steps. He had changed since the diner booth. Not in any way she could name exactly. The same charcoal severity, the same gray stillness in the eyes. But something had tightened around him, some extra armor that had not been there when he was only dealing with a frightened waitress. Tonight he was not dealing with her. Tonight he was walking into his own house, and the house was going to try to eat him. He watched her cross the drive. He did not smile. He did not need to. When she reached the first step, he held out his hand, palm up, and said very quietly, "Breathe." "I am breathing," she said. "Not well." "Fine. Not well." His mouth almost moved. "You look like someone I would have chased." "I look like someone you're pretending to have chased." "Yes," he said. "That's what I meant." He took her hand. His fingers were warmer than she had expected. Her own were ice. He noticed, and something minute shifted in his face. Not concern, not kindness, just an acknowledgement, the way a man might note that the wind had picked up before a storm. "Listen to me now," he murmured, leaning close enough that the guard at the door could not hear. His breath touched her ear, and she felt every hair on the back of her neck lift at once. "From the moment we cross that threshold, every person in this house is going to watch us. Do not look at me for permission. Do not look at me for rescue. Look at me the way a woman looks at a man she has already decided about. That is the only look that will survive this room." "I don't know what that looks like." "Yes, you do." She frowned up at him. "How would I—" "You've served couples for 2 years, Miss Carter. You know exactly what it looks like. Borrow it." She almost laughed. She almost cried. She did neither. She lifted her chin, fit her hand more firmly into his, and let him walk her through the door. The entrance hall of the Vance estate opened above her like the inside of a church. 2 stories tall, black and white tile, in a pattern that made her dizzy if she looked down, a chandelier hanging from a chain that looked older than the country. A woman in a black dress took her coat without speaking. A man in a darker suit closed the door behind them with a sound so soft it felt deliberate. Somewhere, deep in the house, a piano was playing something slow and in a minor key, the kind of music rich people chose because it sounded more serious than it was. Then the first face appeared. A woman, late 50s. Silver at the temples, the rest of her hair dyed a shade of chestnut that did not quite exist in nature. She emerged from a side room with her arms already opening, her smile already on, and Nina understood, in the half-second before the woman reached them, that this smile had been sharpened since breakfast. "Dominic." The woman took his face in both hands and kissed him once on each cheek.
You're late. We're on time, Aunt Teresa. You're late for me. I wanted 10 minutes alone with her before the rest of them got their claws in. She turned. Her eyes found Nina's face and did not let go. And so, this is the one. This is Nina, Dominic said. Nina, my Aunt Teresa Vance. She is the only member of this family you are allowed to trust tonight, and even that only conditionally. Oh, stop. You'll frighten her. Teresa reached out and took Nina's hand with both of hers. Her grip was stronger than it looked. Nina, welcome. Come in, come in. Tell me everything. He tells me nothing. He tells no one anything. It's a disease in this family. It's nice to meet you, Nina managed. Is it? Teresa's smile widened by a millimeter. We'll see in an hour. Come, drink first, then you can meet the others in an order of my choosing, because if I leave it up to them, they will descend on you like gulls. She tucked Nina's hand into the crook of her arm and began walking, and Nina realized with a strange lurch that she had been taken prisoner by the one ally she was supposed to have. Dominic followed half a step behind, and she could feel him watching her, the way a man watches a dog he has just sent onto thin ice. The drawing room was warmer. A fire was going in a hearth wide enough to stand in. 8 or 9 people were already gathered, holding drinks, holding conversations, holding expressions that all politely rearranged themselves when Nina walked in. She felt the temperature of the room change. It was a small, specific drop, the kind a body notices before the mind does. Everyone, Teresa said brightly, this is Nina. She is Dominic's, and if any of you behave badly to her, you will answer to me, which all of you know is worse than answering to him. A chuckle rippled through the room. It was not a warm chuckle. It was the chuckle people perform when they have been told a joke by someone they cannot afford to ignore. One by one, they came forward. An uncle named Lucio, heavy in the jaw, who kissed her hand and told her she had brave eyes, which she understood immediately was not a compliment. A cousin named Anna, all of 23, who looked Nina up and down with the focused hatred of a woman who suspected she had been outranked. A man named Paolo, who did not shake her hand at all, only nodded, and let his gaze slide past her as though she were furniture he had decided not to buy. And then the room quieted in a way that was not the piano's fault. A man stood up from the armchair closest to the fire. He was older than Dominic, perhaps 60, and he wore his age like an expensive coat. Silver hair, cut close. A face that had been handsome once and had settled into something more dangerous than handsome. His eyes were the same gray as Dominic's, and they moved the same way. Slowly, without blinking, as though the world had never given him a reason to hurry. Nina did not need to be told who he was. Uncle, Dominic said. Dominic. The man's voice was quiet and precise. He crossed the room without haste. He stopped in front of Nina and looked at her for a long moment. So, the new one. Nina Carter, Nina said, and she was proud later when she remembered this moment of how even her voice had come out. It's an honor, Mr. Vance. Cesare, he said, please, we're family tonight. The word family came out of his mouth like a coin he was flipping to see which side landed. Cesare, she said, and how did you meet my nephew, Nina? She had been waiting for this question for 4 days. Eleanor had drilled it into her until she could have recited it at gunpoint. At the Harrow Gallery's fall auction, she said. He outbid me on a piece I had been watching for weeks. I told him he had terrible taste. He said I was probably right, but that he had better reasons than I did. She tilted her head very slightly. It turned out he bought it for a friend who had lost a daughter to illness. I felt very small afterwards. Cesare's gray eyes did not move from her face the whole time she was speaking. Did you? Yes. Feel small? Yes. How interesting. He smiled, and the smile did not touch his eyes. My nephew does not usually tell stories about himself that make him look kind. He must be very taken with you. I think, Nina said, he just doesn't mind if I tell them. Someone across the room made a small sound. Surprise or admiration or both. Teresa's hand tightened slightly on Nina's arm. A warning or applause. Nina could not tell which. Cesare held her gaze a beat longer. Welcome to the family, Nina Carter, he said. And then he turned and walked back to his armchair, sat down, and did not look at her again for the next 30 minutes. Nina did not breathe until he had sat down. Drink, Teresa murmured into her ear,
handing her a wine glass she had not seen appear. Small sips. Don't finish it. They watch how fast a woman drinks. It tells them things. Things like what? Things like whether they can push harder later. Nina took the glass. She took a small sip. The wine was better than anything she had ever tasted, and she did not taste it at all. Dominic drifted to her side, not quite touching her, but close enough that his sleeve brushed hers. He leaned down. "That was well done," he said, so quietly that only she could hear. "Your uncle doesn't like me."
My uncle doesn't like anyone. He likes me less than anyone. That's because you did well.
She turned her head slightly to look up at him. His face was unreadable, but there was something beneath it that had not been there in the entry hall. Not warmth. Attention. He was looking at her the way a man looks at a knife he had bought for a specific purpose, and has just discovered might also be beautiful. She looked away before she could feel what she felt about that. "Where is she?" Nina said. "She isn't here yet." "She's late on purpose." "Of course she's late on purpose. When she comes in, don't react." His voice was very level. "She will walk in. She will look for me first. She will find you next. And she will make a face. Do not make a face back. Smile as though you have not registered her at all. That is the cruelest thing you can do, and she will never forgive you for it, which is exactly what we want." "Dominic." "Yes?" "Is she dangerous?" There was a pause. "Yes," he said. "To me?" "Not tonight. Tonight she is only dangerous to herself." The chime of a small bell sounded somewhere in the hallway. Teresa's head came up. She released Nina's arm. "Dinner," she said. "Come. The seating will be interesting." It was, Nina would later realize, the understatement of the evening. The dining room was longer than a subway car. A single table ran down the center of it, set for 30, with enough silver on it to sink a boat. Candles. Orchids. Name cards written in a hand so elaborate that at first Nina could not read her own. Dominic was seated at one end, as the host. Nina, to her astonishment, was not seated at the other end, where the hostess should have been. She was seated at his right. "This is wrong," she whispered to him as they stood behind their chairs. "I should be... You are where I want you. Your grandmother should be here, or an aunt. My grandmother is dead. My aunt is seated where she earned her seat." He pulled her chair out for her. "Sit, Nina. You are going to be watched. Sit as though you belong here." She sat. She had not been in her chair for 10 seconds when the doors at the far end of the dining room opened one last time, and Bianca De Luca walked in. She was more beautiful in person than in her photograph. That was the first thing Nina understood, and the second thing she understood was that the beauty was not the point. The point was the way Bianca walked, slowly, unhurried, with the precise confidence of a woman who had never, in her adult life, entered a room that did not adjust itself for her. She wore red. Not a polite red, not a dinner red. The kind of red that was a decision. Her hair was down. Her mouth was painted to match the dress. Every head in the room turned. Bianca let them. She crossed to Dominic first. She did not touch him, which was interesting. Nina had expected a performance of contact. Instead, she stopped a foot away from him and tilted her head. "Dominic." "Bianca." "You look well." "So do you." "Of course I do." Her eyes slid for the first time to Nina. The smile that had been carefully held together on her mouth fractured at the corners, very briefly, and then reset. "And this must be her. This is Nina." "Nina?" Bianca rolled the word around, tasting it. "Just Nina?" "Nina Carter," Nina said, and smiled. A small, pleasant smile. The kind she used on customers who were about to complain. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss De Luca." "Is it? Yes?" "How diplomatic." Bianca's smile widened. "Tell me, Nina Carter, what is it that you do?" "I work at the Harrow Gallery." "In what capacity?" "Assistant curator." "Assistant." Bianca repeated the word like it was a fruit she had bitten into and found unripe. "How charming. And before that?" "I studied art history." "Where?" "Whitmore College." "I don't know it." "No, most people don't." The pause was a quarter beat too long. Nina let it sit there. She did not fill it. Filling it would have been losing. Eleanor had drilled that into her too. Silence is a weapon the nervous always hand back. Do not hand it back. Bianca's smile thinned. Well, she turned to find her seat. I look forward to learning more about you, Nina Carter. I'm sure you have so much to tell us. She was seated 4 chairs down from Nina on the same side of the table. This had been arranged. Nina understood, immediately, that every seating choice in the room had been arranged by someone, and that she herself had been placed at Dominic's right hand as a flag planted in disputed soil. The first course came, a cold soup the color of a bruise. Nina did not know what it was. She watched Teresa across the table pick up the correct spoon, and she picked up the same one, and she ate it without expression. The table talked. The table drank. The table was a house full of careful people making careful sentences, and every so often one of them would turn a careful sentence toward Nina, and Nina would answer it, and the table would politely move on, having, as far as she could tell, learned nothing it had not already expected. She was doing well. She could feel Dominic beside her, knowing she was doing well. He did not touch her, but every so often he would shift very slightly, and the edge of his hand would brush her wrist, and she understood it was a signal. Still here, still with you. Then, over the second course, something small and pink on a white plate, Bianca set her wine glass down. Nina, she said, may I ask you something? The table quieted, not all the way, just enough. Of course. How does a woman like you, Bianca said sweetly, end up on Dominic Vance's arm? 3 seconds, breathe in, breathe out, speak. Nina smiled. The same way a woman like you did, I imagine. A silence. And then, from somewhere halfway down the table, a single bark of laughter, sharp, surprised, cut off almost instantly. Teresa pretended to cough into her napkin. Cesare, at his end of the table, did not laugh, but his eyes, for the first time all evening, lifted to Nina's face, and something in them was new. Bianca's smile did not move, but her hand, on the stem of her wine glass, tightened until the knuckles went white. How funny, Bianca said. I thought so, Nina said, and yet, Bianca leaned forward just a little. We don't come from the same places, you and I. No, we don't. Millbrook, was it? Your hometown? Yes. I have a cousin in Millbrook, Roderick. He says he's never heard of you. Nina's stomach dropped 1 full floor, but her face did not move. She had rehearsed this. Eleanor had rehearsed this. There will always be a Roderick. Millbrook's a small town, Nina said pleasantly, but I didn't grow up at the country club, Bianca. I grew up at the public library. It's not surprising your cousin and I never met. Another ripple of amusement down the table. Not on Bianca's side. Bianca's mouth tightened. Nina understood, watching her, that Bianca DeLuca had spent her whole life being the sharpest knife at the table, and that she was beginning to realize, for the first time, that she had been brought a worse knife than she had expected. Your mother, Bianca said, changing her angle. She was a school teacher, I believe. She was. Still is, or... She passed 2 years ago. A pause delicately held. Bianca gave a small, sad smile. The kind that was not a smile at all. How terrible. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Cancer? Yes. My mother passed from cancer as well. Bianca's eyes were bright. We have something in common after all. I'm sorry to hear that. We are similar in that way, you and I. Women who had to grow up quickly. Bianca sipped her wine. Tell me, when your mother passed, what did you do next? It was a dangerous question. Eleanor had not prepared her for this one exactly. Nina felt the ice in her stomach spread up into her chest. She said the truth, because the lie was too heavy right then to lift. I worked, she said. Where? Anywhere that would have me. Doing what? Nina's throat was dry. Across the table, Teresa was watching her. Dominic, beside her, had gone very still. She could feel him, waiting. She could feel the whole room waiting. 3 seconds. Breathe in, breathe out. I waited tables, Nina said. A small, sharp silence. Bianca's smile returned, triumphant and slow. How charming. A waitress. Dominic! She turned her head to look at him, to watch him flinch. Has brought a waitress to his grandmother's table. The silence lasted perhaps 2 seconds, and then Nina laughed. It was not a big laugh. It was a soft laugh, warm, surprised, the laugh of a woman who had been handed a flower instead of a knife and could not quite believe her luck. It disarmed the whole table for a half-second. The laugh was so unexpected, so relaxed, that nobody knew where to put their faces. Yes, Nina said, before the gallery. I worked through school. I waited tables at a small place near my college. It was how I paid rent. She turned back to Bianca. Her smile was perfectly level. Does it bother you? Does what bother me? That a woman who waited tables could sit where I'm sitting. Nina tilted her head. Because if it does, Bianca, I'd like to know. I'd rather not have to keep wondering the rest of dinner. Bianca stared at her. Nina did not look away. The room around them had become a held breath. It doesn't bother me at all, Bianca said finally. Her voice was just slightly too high. Why would it? No reason, Nina said. She picked up her fork. I was only asking. And she went back to her dinner. Dominic, next to her, had not moved. But when Nina's hand came to rest on the tablecloth a moment later, reaching for her water glass, his hand came to rest beside it. Not touching, just near. Near enough that anyone looking would see it, near enough that she would feel it. She did not turn her head, but something in her chest, which had been a tight, frightened fist since she arrived, loosened by a single finger's width. Further down the table, Cesare Vance picked up his wine glass and took a slow sip. His gray eyes were on his nephew. They had been on his nephew the whole time. But for the first time all evening, when his eyes moved, they did not move to Bianca. They moved to Nina. She felt the weight of that look like a cold hand at the back of her neck, and she understood, not fully, not yet, but enough, that she had just been promoted, from decoration to problem. The third course came, then the fourth. The conversation rebuilt itself around her carefully, the way water rebuilds itself after a stone has been dropped into it. She spoke when spoken to. She laughed, lightly, when it was appropriate. She held her wine glass by the stem and did not finish her glass and watched, from the corner of her eye as Bianca De Luca did finish hers, twice, and began to speak more loudly than she had earlier in the evening. Teresa across from her caught her eye at one point and gave her the smallest nod. It was not approval. It was closer to a warning. As though Teresa were saying, you are winning, and winning is when you become dangerous. Between the fifth course and dessert, there was a pause. A small one. A footman came to Dominic's side and leaned to his ear. Nina could not hear what was said. She saw only that Dominic's jaw tightened very slightly and that his hand, resting on the tablecloth beside hers, went still. Dominic? She said, too quietly for anyone else to hear. He did not look at her. He was looking down the length of the table toward the far doors. We have company, he murmured. What? Sit. Smile. Say nothing. The double doors at the end of the dining room opened. 3 men walked in, all in dark suits, all without coats, all very clearly not on the guest list. The man at the front was heavy in the chest, gray at the temples, and he walked into the Vance family's dining room as though he had every right to, and perhaps he thought he did. Behind him, a younger man, thin and handsome, watched the room with eyes that did not blink enough. Behind him, a third man, older, quieter, and Nina noticed carrying his right hand awkwardly, as if he were used to having something in it. The conversation died. Every face at the table turned toward the doors. Cesare Vance set his wine glass down with a small, distinct click. Matteo, he said. His voice was soft. You weren't expected. No, the gray man said. I wasn't. He smiled. He had a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that had been used over the years to move very large sums of money and a few much smaller coffins. But I heard there was a family dinner, and I thought, a family dinner on such an important night without me? Surely there has been a misunderstanding. There has been no misunderstanding, Dominic said. The gray man, Matteo, Nina repeated in her head. Remember him? Remember the name? Turned his smile on Dominic. Dominic, the man of the hour, seated at the head of the table with a beautiful woman on his right, looking every inch the air. Matteo clasped his hands in front of himself. I wanted to come.
I wanted to see it for myself. My father, you remember, knew yours. He always said Vittorio's boy will either become the man his father was, or he will be crushed by the trying. I've been curious, all evening, which of those we would be seeing tonight. Matteo, Teresa's voice was cold. You are in our house. I am in your dining room, Matteo corrected gently. There is a difference. I haven't been invited into the house in some time. Nina understood, watching this, that whatever was happening had nothing to do with her. But she also understood, from the tightness in Dominic's shoulder, that this was not a rehearsed moment. This was not a scheduled performance. Matteo's arrival had not been part of the plan, and a thing that was not part of the plan, in this family, was the definition of danger. Matteo's eyes drifted along the table and found her. And who, he said, is this? 3 seconds. Breathe in, breathe out. Nina did not wait for Dominic to introduce her. She understood, with a clarity she could not have explained, that the fastest way to make this unknown man safer was to take the introduction into her own hands. She stood, not fully, just enough to extend her hand across the table. Her voice was even, pleasant, exactly as it had been when Cesare had asked her the same question an hour earlier. Nina Carter, she said. I'm with Dominic. It's a pleasure. Matteo looked at her hand for a half-second too long before he crossed to it and took it. His grip was dry and firm, and told her, in an instant, that this was a man who had killed people and slept well afterwards. A pleasure, Miss Carter. His smile found its full shape. I hadn't realized Dominic had become so serious about anyone. How long has it been? 4 months, she said. 4 months. Matteo's eyes did not leave her face. That's a long time in his world. He is usually so restless. What is it about you, Miss Carter, that has finally settled him? It was a question built out of knives. She understood immediately that any answer that praised herself would be weakness, any answer that praised Dominic would be flattery, and any answer that refused to answer would be fear. There was only one kind of answer that could stand up. I'm not sure he's settled, Mr. Moretti. Matteo Moretti. Mr. Moretti, I'm not sure he's settled at all. I'm only sure he hasn't gotten rid of me yet. A beat. Matteo's laugh when it came was short and surprised and genuinely amused. Dominic! He turned back to Dominic. She is sharper than the last one. Yes, Dominic said quietly. She is. I like her. Good. I won't keep you. I came only to offer my congratulations on a dinner I hear has gone unusually well. Matteo turned his gaze briefly back to Cesare at the far end of the table. His smile thinned, very slightly. I understand certain arrangements are being reconsidered, given recent developments. I only wanted to see the developments for myself. You've seen them, Dominic said. I have. Then let me walk you out. No need. Matteo bowed very slightly toward Nina, and then to Teresa, and pointedly, not toward Cesare. Miss Carter, Mrs. Vance, a pleasure. We will see each other again, I'm sure. And with that, he and his 2 silent men turned and walked back out through the doors they had come in through, and the doors closed behind them. The room did not breathe for several seconds. Nina realized only then that she was still standing. Slowly, she sat down. Her hand on the tablecloth was shaking. Dominic's hand came to rest over hers before she could pull it away, and this time he did not pretend. He did not make it look like nothing. He pressed down, firm, warm, deliberate, and he held her hand on the white tablecloth in front of 30 people as though to show every single one of them that what Matteo Moretti had come to see was real. It should have been a performance. It did not feel entirely like one. Teresa, across the table, was looking at her nephew with an expression Nina could not read. Cesare, at the far end, had picked up his wine again, but his gray eyes were fixed on Dominic and Nina's joined hands, and his jaw had set in a way that suggested he was performing several calculations at once. The conversation slowly, carefully, restarted around them, though it was quieter now and more brittle. Dessert arrived. Nina did not taste it. Then, under the cover of the clinking of small spoons against porcelain, Bianca De Luca leaned forward in her seat. Her voice, when it came, was low enough to feel private but loud enough to carry exactly 4 chairs. Dominic, she said sweetly,
May I borrow your girl? Just for a minute. I'd love to show her the portrait gallery before coffee. Nina's heart, which had just begun to slow, lurched up into her throat. Dominic's thumb moved once across the back of her hand. A signal. She did not know what it meant. Go, or stay, or I can't stop this. And she did not have time to ask. Of course, he said. His voice was pleasant, his eyes were not. Nina, sweetheart, go with her. I'll have coffee waiting, sweetheart. It was the first time he had used an endearment all night. It was, she understood, not for her. It was for Bianca. It was a small, perfectly placed needle, and she watched it land in Bianca's jaw and travel down to Bianca's hand around her wine glass, and she watched Bianca's knuckles go white a second time. Nina stood. Her legs held her. She did not know how. I'd love to see the portraits, she said. Bianca rose, smiled like a cat that had been offered a bird, and led her out through a side door into a long marble hallway where the piano music no longer reached, and the only sound was the click of their heels on the stone, echoing away from the dining room and into somewhere the rest of the family would not hear what either of them said next. Nina walked beside her. She did not look at her. She looked ahead, at the rows of oil paintings in heavy gold frames, at the dead men and dead women of the Vance family, staring down at her with the same gray eyes, and she understood that she was not, yet, out of the evening. She was only, at last, out of witnesses. Their heels made the only sound in the world. The hallway was longer than it had any right to be. Black and white marble underfoot, oil paintings rising on both sides into a ceiling painted with something Nina did not have time to look up at. The air was colder here, several degrees colder than the dining room, as though the house had decided that guests who strayed this far should be reminded, physically, that they were no longer being hosted. Bianca walked just a half step ahead. She did not turn her head. She did not speak. She let the silence do the work for her, the long, polished, humiliating silence of a woman who had decided that Nina was not, yet, worth a sentence. Nina kept her chin level. She kept her breathing slow. She counted paintings. 14. 15. A man in a dark jacket with a medal at his throat. A woman in gray, younger than Nina, holding a small dog. Another man. Another man. Another man. The Vance family had been accumulating men with serious faces for a long time, and every one of them had been painted to stare directly into the eye of anyone who walked this hall. At the end of the corridor, Bianca stopped in front of the largest portrait of all. A man perhaps 50 years old, silver-haired in a different way than Cesare, with a harder mouth and a sadder set to his eyes. The brass plaque under the frame read, Vittorio A. Vance. Dominic's father, Bianca said. It was the first sentence she had spoken in 100 feet. I figured, Nina said. Did you? The eyes. Bianca turned her head slightly. Yes, the eyes. Everyone notices the eyes. She reached up, tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, and her red mouth settled into something that was not quite a smile. Tell me, Nina, do you know how Vittorio Vance died? No. No? No, Bianca, I don't. He was shot at a dinner, not unlike the one we just came out of. Bianca's eyes did not leave the portrait. He was a careful man. He had been a careful man for 40 years. He had made, by all accounts, only one mistake in his entire life, and that mistake was trusting the wrong person at the wrong table. She turned finally to look at Nina. Dominic was 19. He was sitting across from his father when it happened. He had blood on his shirt for the rest of the night. They say he did not speak for a week. Nina did not move. I tell you this, Bianca said. Not to frighten you. You're already frightened. I can see it under your nice dress and your pretty posture. I tell you because I want you to understand something, Nina Carter. If that is even your name, which I suspect it is, because a better liar would have chosen a prettier one. I want you to understand that this is not a family that plays. This is a family that eats. And tonight, at that table, they are deciding whether to eat you or to keep you. Do you know the difference? I imagine you'll tell me. The difference is whether Dominic chose you or whether Dominic found you. Bianca's gaze was steady. I've known him all my life. I know how he thinks. He does not chase women. He does not visit galleries. He does not outbid anyone on anything he did not already own. I don't know where he found you, Nina. But I know he found you. And I know the price of being found by Dominic Vance, because I was once found by him myself. Something moved, very slightly, behind her eyes. Something Nina had not expected to see there. Not malice, not even anger. For a half second, something much softer and much older, quickly hidden. Nina took a breath. "Bianca," she said, "why are we here?" "Because I wanted to talk to you alone." "About what?" "About the fact that this is an act, and the fact that I know it's an act, and the fact that if I chose, I could go back into that dining room right now and tell every person at that table exactly what you are." The cold in Nina's chest became specific. It settled with strange calm into a single point just below her sternum. "And what am I, Bianca?" "A girl he hired, an actress, a convenience. Is that what I am? Do you want to keep pretending, or do you want to talk?" 3 seconds, Nina told herself. Breathe in, breathe out. She had been asked to survive tonight. Eleanor had taught her to deflect. Dominic had warned her not to react. Teresa had signaled her across the table to keep winning. None of them, not a single one of them, had prepared her for this. A woman who already knew, and who had decided to say so in a hallway where no one could hear. Nina's mind ran, very quickly, through every door in the room. She could deny it. Bianca would not believe her. Bianca already did not believe her. She could cry. Bianca would smell the performance and harden. She could threaten back. Bianca had nothing to lose. Nina had $50,000, and she was now realizing her life. Or she could do the last thing Bianca was expecting. She could agree. "Yes," Nina said. Bianca's head tilted. "I'm sorry?" "I said yes." "You're right." Nina lifted her chin. "I'm not his girlfriend. I don't work at the Harrow Gallery. I didn't go to Whitmore. I've never been to Millbrook in my life. I waited tables at a place called Rossi's on Kessler Avenue until Tuesday night, when Dominic Vance sat down in my section and offered me $50,000 to come to this dinner and pretend to love him. I took the money because my mother's hospital bills ate everything I had, and I hadn't paid my rent in 3 weeks. That's who I am, Bianca. That's what I am." She held the other woman's eyes. "Now, are you going to tell them?" Bianca stared at her. For the first time all evening, the rehearsed predatory smile had completely left her face. She looked briefly like a woman who had prepared a long speech and had it handed back to her on the first sentence. "You're lying," she said. But the certainty was gone. "No, I'm not. I don't have the energy to lie to you, Bianca. I've been lying for 6 hours. It's exhausting. You know what else is exhausting? Being a waitress. You should try it sometime. Builds character." "Do you think this is funny?" "I think I've already lost. I think you've already won. I don't see the point in making you work harder for it." Bianca opened her mouth, closed it. Nina took one step closer to her. Not threatening, just closer. Close enough that Bianca could see her face clearly in the low gallery light. "You want to know why he picked me?" Nina said softly. "I'll tell you that too. He picked me because I'm nobody. Because when you throw me away, I don't splash. No friends to come asking. No family to come knocking. Nobody even knew I wasn't at work tonight, Bianca. You understand? He found the cheapest, most disposable woman he could find, and he paid her just enough to make it worth not asking questions. And I said yes. Because I'm tired, and because my mother's bills are still coming every month, and because $50,000 is more money than I have ever seen in my life." Bianca was very still. "So you can go tell them," Nina said. "Go, walk back in there, pull him out of his chair, announce me to the whole table. I won't stop you. I couldn't stop you. Do whatever you need to do, but before you do..." She took one more step. "I want you to ask yourself a question." "What question?" "Why did he need someone like me?" Bianca blinked. "Why didn't he bring one of the 100 women in this city who would have come willingly?" Nina continued. "Why didn't he bring a socialite, a model, an actress, a cousin of a cousin? Why did he go hunting in a restaurant on Kessler Avenue for a girl with calluses on her hands who doesn't know which fork to pick up? Think about it, Bianca. You grew up in that room. I didn't. You tell me. Why does a man like Dominic Vance specifically need a woman nobody's looking for?" A pause. A long one. Something shifted in Bianca's face, not understanding exactly, closer to unease. She had come into this hallway with a clean weapon, a piece of knowledge, a single fact, and Nina had taken it from her and handed it back pointed the wrong way. "He's using you. Bianca said, but her voice had lost its sharpness. Yes, he is. We've established that. For what? That's a better question, isn't it? You don't know. I know enough. Tell me. No. Bianca's eyes narrowed. You don't have the luxury of no.
I do, actually. Nina tilted her head. Here's the math, Bianca. If I tell you, you use it against him. If you use it against him, you use it against me, because right now I'm standing on his side of the board. If you use it against me, I lose the money. If I lose the money, I have no reason to protect any part of this, and I walk into that dining room and I tell every single thing to every single person with the loudest voice I have, including Matteo Moretti, who I am guessing would find it all very interesting indeed. She let the name land. So no, I don't think I'll tell you, but I will say this. She leaned in. Dominic did not bring me here to hurt you, Bianca. He brought me here to win something that has nothing to do with you. And you are making yourself bigger than you are tonight by pretending this is about you. You're an ex-fiancé at a family dinner. That's all. I know it because I know what a nobody looks like. And tonight, in this house, you're a nobody too. Just a nicer dressed one than I am. Bianca's hand came up before Nina had time to register it. The slap would have landed if the footsteps had not come. A soft, steady click of polished shoes on marble. Not hurried, not quiet. A man who wanted them to know he was approaching. Bianca's hand dropped. Cesare Vance rounded the corner. He was alone. He had taken off the napkin that had been on his knee at dinner. He had not bothered to bring a drink. He walked down the gallery with the easy, slow gait of a man who had walked this hallway 10,000 times and had never, not once, had to worry about who else was in it. Ladies, he said mildly, the coffee is growing cold. Bianca recovered first. She always would. We were just coming back, Cesare. So I see. His gray eyes moved between the two of them, calm and unhurried. Portraits to your taste, Miss Carter? They're beautiful, Nina said. Are they? Yes. That one is my brother. Cesare inclined his head toward the portrait of Vittorio. Dominic's father. He had the painting done 3 years before he was killed. He did not want to do it. He said portraits were for men who thought they mattered more than they did. My mother insisted. I'm glad she did. His voice did not change. Do you know how he died, Miss Carter? Miss DeLuca just told me. Did she? Yes. How kind of her. Cesare's gaze moved very briefly to Bianca. It was not a warm look. Bianca, my dear, your mother has been asking after you. She is at the far end of the coffee room, alone, and I know how much you dislike her being alone. Would you be an angel? It was not a request. Bianca understood that. She performed a small, tight smile, did not look at Nina again, and walked back down the hallway toward the dining room with her red dress moving behind her like something leaving a crime scene. Cesare and Nina stood under the painting of the dead man. May I walk you back? Cesare said. Yes. Shall we take the long way? It was again not a question. Nina nodded. He gestured with one open hand, and they began to walk. Not back the way Bianca had gone, but around a corner, into a second, narrower gallery that opened onto a glass conservatory on their left. Rain was falling against the conservatory glass. The garden beyond was dark, but she could see the shape of a marble fountain and the paler shapes of rose bushes that had been cut back for winter. He walked slowly. He did not speak for perhaps 10 full seconds. She understood, with the small, clear part of her brain that was still functioning, that this was deliberate, that a man like Cesare never let a silence stretch by accident, only ever by instruction. You did well at dinner, he said finally. Thank you. No, don't thank me for noticing. That's a waitress's habit. Nina's step did not falter, but her breath did. Cesare did not look at her. He walked, hands clasped loosely behind his back, his gray eyes on the rain against the glass. I've been in this family, he said, for 61 years. In the course of those 61 years, I have eaten dinner at that table with a great many people. Women Dominic's father brought home. Women Dominic brought home. One of them, once, was a girl from Bianca's school. Most of them I could place in the room within 5 minutes of sitting down. A very few I had to study. Only one, in 61 years,
sat at that table and in 2 courses made me set down my wine glass and actually pay attention. He paused. Tonight you were the second. Nina said nothing. So I'm going to ask you a question, Miss Carter, Cesare said. And I'm going to ask it kindly and only once, and your answer will decide several things that concern several people. Do you understand me? I understand. Who are you? She kept walking, her heels on the marble, the rain on the glass. 1 step, 2. She reminded herself that he had already made up his mind about her. All that was left was to decide what version of the truth she wanted him to make his decision on. I'm a woman your nephew brought to dinner, she said quietly. That is not an answer. It's the only answer that's mine to give. Cesare stopped. She stopped with him. He turned and looked at her, fully, for the first time since they had begun walking. His eyes were the same gray as Dominic's, but there was something colder in them, something farther back. Dominic's stillness was a wall. Cesare's was a grave. I could ask, he said, why a woman working at the Harrow Gallery has a hairline callus on the knuckle of her right index finger that comes, in my experience, only from repeatedly carrying heavy trays. I could ask why, when the soup arrived, you waited 1 full second and watched my sister pick up her spoon before you picked up yours. I could ask why, when you sat down, you smoothed the back of your dress with both hands, a habit of women who have worn uniforms with aprons and who are worried, even in an expensive dress, about the fall of the cloth. I could ask, Miss Carter, quite a number of things, but I have not asked them at dinner in front of others. Do you understand why? Her mouth was dry. No, she said. Because, Cesare said, when Matteo Moretti walked into my dining room uninvited, you stood up before my nephew did. You introduced yourself before he could. You took Matteo's hand in front of 30 witnesses and you made him laugh, something no one in this house has made him do in 15 years. You did that with the composure of a woman much older than you are, at a table that, an hour earlier, you had never sat at. Whoever you are, Miss Carter, and wherever my nephew found you, you saved his evening tonight. Possibly more than his evening. That has bought you, in my opinion, the courtesy of not being exposed in front of strangers. She swallowed. Are you exposing me now? No, I am offering you something. What? He tilted his head very slightly. An honest conversation. 1, only this one, and only here. Will you take it? Yes. Then I will begin. His voice did not rise. My nephew is a man I love, in the particular way that one loves an animal one is raised by hand and knows to be dangerous. He is not a man who should lead this family. He is clever, and he is quick, and he is physically brave in a way that was useful to his father. He is not wise. He makes decisions at 3 in the morning when he should be making them at 3 in the afternoon. He trusts his own instincts over the counsel of men who have survived longer than he has. Tonight, he sat a woman he has known for 4 days at his right hand at our most important dinner of the year and dressed her in our blue. Do you know what that blue means, Miss Carter? No, it means wife. In this family, for 5 generations, a woman seated in that chair, in that color, on that night, has always been a woman the head of the house intended to marry. Dominic put you in that dress because he wanted to answer a question the family has been asking him for a year. And the family, tonight, watched a waitress. His eyes were steady. Yes, Miss Carter, I know. A waitress answered the question better than any DeLuca, any Moretti, any daughter of any senator we have paraded through here could have. Do you understand what you have done tonight without knowing you were doing it? No, she whispered. You have made him look stable. You have made him look loved. You have made him look like a man who cannot be replaced, which is the one thing I have been working for a year to prove he is not. The cold in her chest was no longer specific. It was everywhere. Cesare Vance's face did not move. So now I ask you, Miss Carter, and I ask you kindly, what is your price? I don't... for leaving. Her breath caught. I will pay, he said, whatever my nephew is paying you. I will pay it twice. I will pay it 3 times. I will pay you additionally to walk out of this house tonight before coffee, to get into a car I will provide, and to go somewhere far enough that his people cannot find you, and to never speak his name again. I will arrange the rest. My nephew will be told, when he asks, that you lost your nerve. That is a version of events that does him no permanent damage. It will only slow him, which is all I need." The conservatory glass rattled softly under the rain. Nina looked at him. Really looked. She looked at the silver hair at his temples, the faint crease at the corner of his mouth where she understood now that he was capable of softness, but only toward things he had already decided were weaker than he was. She looked at the gray eyes, which did not blink. She looked at the hand that had come to rest very lightly on the handle of the conservatory door beside them, the relaxed hand of a man who had killed people and had not lost sleep. "How much?" she said. The words were out before she had decided to say them. "How much would you pay me?" Cesare's mouth curved very slightly. 200,000 tonight. Another 300 when you reach wherever you are going. $500,000, Miss Carter, to do one thing you already know how to do better than anyone in this room. Walk away from something that isn't yours. She felt the number hit her somewhere below the collarbone and then pass through her and out the back of her chest, as though she were standing at the edge of a tall building and the wind had taken a step toward her. $500,000. Her mother's bills, the apartment, a car that did not stall at red lights, teeth fixed, a new pair of shoes without holes, a year, maybe 2, of not being afraid every time the phone rang. She could taste it. She could feel beneath her feet the floor of that other life opening up. All she had to do was reach down and take it. She stood very still. She thought about Dominic's hand on hers on the tablecloth, the small, deliberate press of it, the performance that was not quite a performance. She thought about the note pinned to the blue dress. "You will be the only one. Remember that you chose to be there." She thought about the 3 seconds Eleanor had drilled into her. Then she thought about something else, something she had not known she was carrying until this exact moment. She thought about the way Cesare had said waitress, not with contempt, that she could have survived. Cesare had said it with something worse, with the calm assumption that Nina Carter's worth had a ceiling and that he could reach it with a checkbook. He had said it the way he said the coffee is growing cold, as if she were a fact to be priced, not a person to be convinced. She thought very clearly, "He thinks I am exactly what I am." And then she thought, with a cold that was not fear, "So did my customers. So did Marco. So did every man who ever snapped his fingers at me. He is only the newest one." Her voice, when it came out, was low and steady. "Mr. Vance?" "Yes." "I'm going to decline." Cesare's expression did not change. Not yet. She saw only a small, slow contraction at the very corner of his mouth, as though he were noting, with professional interest, that an experiment had returned an unexpected result. "I beg your pardon." "I said I'm going to decline." "You understand what I have offered?" "I do." "I have offered you, in cash, enough to live on for the rest of your life." "I understand that." "And you are saying no?" "Yes." A pause. "May I ask why?" Nina took a breath. The cold in her chest had, somewhere in the last 10 seconds, become heat. A small heat, low and steady, at the base of her throat. She knew that heat. She had not felt it in a long time. "Because," she said, "if you can buy me for $500,000 tonight, somebody else can buy me for $600,000 tomorrow. And if I take your money, Mr. Vance, then every time I sit down at any table for the rest of my life, I'll know what I sold in order to sit there. And I have been sold cheaply all my life already, and nobody ever told me I could say no to any of it until tonight. Until a man in my section told me I was nobody and then seated me at his right hand anyway. Which is the first time in a long time anybody was honest with me about what I was, and then decided to put me somewhere I didn't belong anyway." Her voice did not shake. "I'm not saying no to you because I love your nephew, Mr. Vance. I don't. I don't even know him. I'm saying no because the next time somebody decides what I'm worth, I want it to be me." The conservatory glass made another small sound under the rain. Cesare did not move for a long moment. Then he inclined his head. Just once. Just slightly. The smallest nod she had ever received from any man, and somehow it felt like the most serious. "Miss Carter," he said, "that was an unwise answer." "I know." "Almost certainly the unwisest answer you could have given." "I know. I admire it." He turned. He opened the conservatory door, not to go through it,
but to let the cool air into the corridor. He breathed it in for a moment. "Understand," he said softly, "that I will not make this offer again. Understand also that I am not your enemy tonight. I am not Dominic's enemy tonight either. I am merely a man who has been making calculations for longer than my nephew has been alive. And tonight, because of you, several of those calculations must be redone from the beginning. That is inconvenient for me. It is also, occasionally, how I know I am still alive." She nodded. "Walk back with me now," he said, closing the door. "The coffee really is cold, and my nephew will be wondering what has become of you, which is a state I do not enjoy seeing him in." They walked. He did not speak again until they reached the doors of the dining room. Then he stopped and turned to her, and his gray eyes studied her face for a long moment. "One last thing, Miss Carter." "Yes." "Bianca." "What about her?" "She reached in the hall for your face. Her stomach went cold. You saw that. I see a great many things. She will not reach for you again. You have my word on that, for whatever that is worth in a house like this one." A pause. "Do not thank me for it. That too is a waitress's habit." "I won't." "Good." He pushed the doors open. The dining room had emptied. The coffee service had been moved into the drawing room next door, and Nina could hear voices, lower and more tired than they had been at dinner, talking about nothing of consequence. A footman was stacking plates. The long white table looked, in the new dimness, like the aftermath of a battle nobody had quite realized had been fought. Dominic was standing alone by the fireplace, a small coffee cup in one hand, the other hand loose at his side. He had been watching the door. She saw, in the half-second before his face reset, that he had been watching the door for longer than he had wanted to be. When he saw her, he set the coffee down on the mantel without looking at it. She crossed the room to him. Her legs held her. Her face held her. She did not know yet what she was going to say to him. He watched her come. His gray eyes were the same color as his uncle's, and told a different story entirely. A story she did not yet know how to read. "Are you all right?" he said quietly, only to her. "I'm fine." "What did she say?" "Nothing I didn't expect." "What did he say?" She hesitated. Behind her in the doorway, she heard Cesare Vance's quiet footsteps pass out of the room and into the drawing room, and she heard him greet someone smoothly, a cousin, and laugh lightly at something, and she understood with a clarity that startled her that the decision she had just made in the hallway was not yet over. It had not even begun. She looked up at Dominic. "We should talk," she said. "After, when this is done. Not here." He watched her face for a long moment. "Yes," he said. "We should." The footman appeared at his elbow, murmured something about the cars being ready on the drive when the last guests were done, and vanished again. Dominic's hand came to the small of Nina's back. Not possessive, not performative, just steady. He guided her slowly toward the drawing room where the rest of the family was waiting. But before they reached the door, his mouth came close to her ear, and his voice, when it came, was lower than she had heard it all night. "Whatever my uncle offered you," he said. "Thank you." She did not answer. She did not know yet whether she would, in the end, be able to say "you're welcome." They stepped into the drawing room together, and the family, one by one, turned to look. The drawing room had the tired, expensive smell of coffee gone lukewarm and flowers that had been cut the day before. A low fire was still going, but the logs had settled into orange ash. Small cups sat on small saucers on small tables. The conversation had the brittle, late-evening softness of people who had eaten too much and said too little and were waiting, politely, for permission to go home. Heads turned when Dominic walked her in. Not all at once. That would have been too obvious. One at a time, the way heads turn in a room when somebody important has just walked past a window. Teresa, from her armchair by the hearth, lifted her coffee cup in a small private salute. The cousin Anna pretended to be interested in a painting she had grown up looking at. Paolo, who had not shaken Nina's hand before dinner, now gave her a slow, thoughtful nod, as though updating a file. Bianca was across the room. Seated beside an older woman Nina guessed was her mother, and Bianca did not look up at all. Her wine glass was full again. Dominic's hand stayed at the small of Nina's back. He did not steer her. He just stayed there, a quiet weight, telling the room that whatever had happened in the hallway, they had come back through the door together. "Another 5 minutes," he murmured. "Then I can get you out."
Okay. Can you give me 5? I can give you 5. He brought her to Teresa's chair first. Teresa set her cup down and took Nina's hand in both of hers again, the way she had at the beginning of the evening, and Nina understood this time that the grip was different, warmer. She was being claimed in some small way in front of the rest of the room. Sit with me a minute, dear. Of course. Dominic left them. Not far. Nina could see him across the room, pouring himself a short glass of something dark from a decanter, exchanging a sentence with an older man who had barely spoken at dinner, but far enough that Teresa felt free to speak. You're pale, Teresa said. I'm tired.
Yes, you've earned it.
Teresa's eyes flicked just once toward the far corner of the room where Cesare had settled into a wing-back chair and was reading something on his phone with the indifference of a man who had not, 10 minutes earlier, offered a stranger $500,000. You spoke with him? Yes. He offered you something? It wasn't a question. Nina did not lie. Yes. Did you take it? No. Teresa exhaled very softly through her nose. Her mouth did not change. Her eyes did. Then I will tell you something, dear, because I doubt anyone else in this house will, and you deserve to hear it before you leave. Teresa leaned forward, just enough that her voice did not have to carry. I have buried 2 brothers. I have buried a husband. I have sat at that dining room table for 51 years and watched my family eat its own. I have seen a great many women come through that door on a man's arm. Most of them did not come back. A few of them did, but only because they broke themselves into pieces small enough to fit on the family shelf. You did not do that tonight, Nina Carter. I almost did. Almost is not did. Write that on your wall. Teresa's hand squeezed hers. Now listen to me. Whatever my nephew tells you tonight, and he will tell you things tonight, that look on his face is not the look of a man who has been keeping his cards. Remember that there is always a door in this house that no one shows you. You find it. You use it. You do not owe anyone in this room anything more than you have already given. Do you understand me? I think so. Good girl. Now go stand next to him before the rest of them start talking. Nina stood. She walked back across the room to Dominic. He handed her, without asking, a small glass of something clear and cold. Water, thank God. Only water. And she took it with a hand she was pleased to see did not shake. She stood at his side. She drank. She did not look at anyone, and she did not look at no one. She let her eyes move the way a woman's eyes move when she is in a room she has earned the right to be in. Bianca, across the room, finally looked at her. Nina raised her glass, very slightly, in Bianca's direction. Not friendly, not cruel, just the smallest acknowledgement. The kind a boxer gives another boxer at the end of a round they both know has been scored. Bianca did not raise hers back, but she did not look away either. Something had settled between the two of them in the hallway. Something Nina would not have been able to put a name to if she had tried, and they both understood without speaking that the evening was over. Cesare stood from his wing-back chair. He crossed the room with the same unhurried gait he had used in the gallery. When he reached them, he offered Nina his hand quite formally. Not a kiss on the hand, a handshake. His palm was dry and cool and firm. Miss Carter, a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I look forward to our next conversation. So do I, Mr. Vance. It was, she thought afterward, the most honest exchange she had with anyone that night. He turned to his nephew. Dominic, a word. Tomorrow, not tonight. Of course. Drive her home safely. I will. Cesare's gray eyes rested on his nephew for a half-second longer than was necessary. Then he inclined his head, once, the same small nod he had given Nina in the hallway, and he walked away. 10 minutes later, they were in a car. Not the same car she had come in. A different one. Black, low, quiet. A driver she did not recognize, with a neck as thick as her wrist. Dominic got in beside her in the back seat. The door closed. The gravel crunched under the tires. The estate fell away behind them, its gold windows shrinking into the trees until the dark closed it off completely, and the road became only rain and headlights. He did not speak for a long time. She did not speak either. The driver drove. The rain hit the windshield in irregular waves. Somewhere around the first long stretch of open highway, Nina felt her shoulders finally drop. Not all the way, but some. She became aware, for the first time in 5 hours, of her own feet and of the fact that they hurt. "There's a change of clothes in the seat back," Dominic said. She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The pocket behind the driver's seat. Jeans, a sweater, flat shoes, if you want to change before we get there." "Before we get where?" He hesitated, just briefly, and she understood he had intended to tell her this later, in private, and had now decided to tell her now. "My house," he said. "Not the estate, my own. I'd like to talk to you there, if you'll come." "Is it far?" 20 minutes. She looked at him. His face was half in shadow, the streetlights passing across it in long orange bars. The severity that had been in him all night, the performance of the air, had softened, not away, but down. The man under it was still the same man, but he had put the mask on the table. "Okay," she said. She changed in the car, behind a rolled-up partition, because she was too tired to care about the awkwardness of it, and because Dominic, without making a point of it, had turned his face so completely to the side window that he could not have seen her if she had wanted him to. The jeans fit. The sweater was soft in a way cheap sweaters never were. The flat shoes were the kind she would never have bought for herself. She folded the blue dress carefully and laid it across her lap. She felt, strangely, that it was no longer a costume. It was a thing she had worn into a war and had worn back out of it, and she was not going to crumple it into a bag. Dominic turned back only when she had finished. "Better?" "Yes." "Good. You looked like you were going to fall over." "I was." The car turned off the highway, then off the smaller highway, then onto a private road that climbed a little hill and curved through trees that had been planted deliberately to hide what was at the end of it. Nina saw, through the rain, a long, low house of dark stone. Not a mansion, not the estate. Something more private, more modern, and much quieter. One light was on in a front window. The car stopped under a stone overhang. Dominic got out, came around to her side and opened her door himself. "Come," he said. She went with him, through a front door that clicked open at his thumb, into a hallway of dark wood and warm lamps, past a living room she glimpsed only as a shape, low couches, a piano, tall bookshelves, and into a smaller room with a fireplace and 2 armchairs and a table between them. The fire was already going. Someone had prepared the room for them. She did not let herself be impressed by that, even though she was. He gestured to an armchair. She sat. He poured 2 glasses of something amber from a decanter, handed her one, and sat across from her. He did not drink his. He set it on the table and laid his hands, palms up, loose, on the arms of his chair. It was the first time all evening she had seen him fully at rest. She understood, watching him, that this was also a performance, but a kinder one. A man who had decided to pretend, in front of her, for a few minutes, that he was a man who could be at rest. "Ask me," he said. "Ask you what?" "Whatever you want to ask me, all of it. I won't lie to you tonight. I owe you at least that." She took a breath. "Why did you really hire me?" A pause. "My uncle told you," he said. It wasn't a question. He had seen her face in the drawing room and read it correctly. "Some of it." "Tell me what some." "He said you put me in the blue because in your family, the blue means wife. He said you did it because the family has been asking for a year whether you can hold anyone. He said tonight was a vote. And he said I answered the question better than any woman from any family in the city could have, which is exactly what he was working to prevent. So he offered me $500,000 to walk away before coffee. Did you know he would do that?" Dominic's hand on the arm of his chair closed very slowly into a fist and then opened again. "I knew he might." "You knew?" "I knew it was possible. I did not know it was certain. I hoped it would not happen." "Why didn't you warn me?" "Because if I had warned you, you would have known to expect the offer, and you would have had an answer ready. And he would have seen that, because he sees everything. The only version of that conversation you could survive was a version where your answer was your own, where he asked you a question that had never been put to you before, and you answered it with whatever you actually were. I needed him to see the actual thing, Nina, not the rehearsed thing, because the actual thing is what I was paying for." "You were paying," she said slowly, "for my refusal." He looked at her. His gray eyes did not move from her face. I was paying, he said, for a chance at it. The fire made a small, dry sound as a log shifted. Nina set her glass down. She had not drunk from it. Explain, she said. From the beginning, all of it. I've earned it. Tell me what I actually walked into tonight. He did not argue. He exhaled once through his nose and he began. A year ago, he said, my uncle Cesare began a quiet campaign inside the family to have me removed as head of the house. Not killed. He's too careful for that. Pushed out. Voted out, if you understand how a thing like that works, which you don't need to. He made the argument that I was unstable, that I was unmarried, that I had no heir, and that the family's holdings could not safely sit on a single pair of shoulders that had no wife behind them. He is, in several ways, not wrong about me. But his real reason is simpler. He believes he should have had the seat himself after my father was killed. I was 19. He was 51. He was asked to step aside for me. He did. And he has spent the 11 years since then calculating how to undo it. Bianca, Nina said. Bianca was my answer to him. My engagement to her was, in large part, political. She came from a family whose name meant something in the right rooms. She was well liked. She was willing. We understood each other. It was not love, but it was not cruelty either, and by our standards that is often enough. What happened? She ended it. Nina blinked. She? Yes. For the first time, something that was almost a smile touched his mouth. It was not a happy smile. She told me 4 months ago that she had come to understand she was in love with someone else, someone my family would never have permitted. She asked me, very bravely, to let her go. I let her go. We agreed to keep the reason private, because a private breakup damages both of us less than a public one. My uncle took the breakup and used it. He turned it into proof that I could not hold a woman, that I was unreliable, that I was, in the word he likes to use when he thinks I am not listening, fragile. So tonight was the dinner at which the family was going to decide, informally, whether to support him or to continue supporting me. The decision would not be announced at dinner. Nothing is ever announced at dinner in this family. But by the end of coffee, every man and woman in that room would have made up their own mind, and those minds would become, over the next month, a vote. I needed, more than anything, to walk into that room tonight with a woman on my arm who made me look like a man who had not been fragile at all. A woman the family would talk about for weeks. And a woman, Nina said softly, who could be thrown away afterward. He was quiet. Yes, he said, because if I had been a woman from another family, I would have complicated you. Yes, a DeLuca cousin would have dragged you into a new treaty. A Moretti cousin would have meant war. A senator's daughter would have put you on the front page of a newspaper. Any real woman would have been a price you couldn't afford to pay, because then you'd owe her afterwards. You needed a woman who would take cash and disappear. Yes? So you went to a diner. Yes. And you picked the one woman in that diner who didn't have anyone to ask where she'd gone. He did not answer. She nodded, slowly. I was a prop, she said. That's the word, isn't it? Nina. No, finish it. I want to hear it. He met her eyes. He did not flinch from it, which was, she would think later, perhaps the only thing that saved the conversation from ending then. You were a prop, he said. At the start. When I walked into that restaurant on Tuesday, I was looking for a prop. I had a short list of 3, and you were the 3rd. That's the truth. You can hate me for it if you want. I would not argue with you. And at the end. Yes, the end. When I stood up at the table to introduce myself to Matteo Moretti, when I told Bianca DeLuca the truth in the hallway, when your uncle offered me $500,000 and I said no to the only real money I have ever been offered in my life, at the end, Dominic, what was I then? He did not speak for a long moment, and then he said very quietly, at the end, you were the only person at that table who was on my side because you had decided to be. She felt that in her chest before she felt it anywhere else. She hated that she felt it. Don't, she said. Don't what? Don't make this more than it was. Don't dress it up. I made a deal, and I honored it.
That's not love, Dominic. That's a contract. I held up my end because I held up my end, and because your uncle insulted me in a way I couldn't stand to let win. That's all. Don't put a crown on it. I'm not putting a crown on it. You are. I'm telling you what I saw. You're telling me what you want to have seen. A beat. That may also be true, he said. He said it evenly. He said it like a man who had caught himself and did not intend to pretend otherwise. She had not expected that. She looked away, into the fire. The log was almost gone. Someone, a staff member she had not seen, must have been watching remotely because a soft sound came from the hallway, and a woman in a plain dark dress entered with a new log, set it on the fire, adjusted it, and left without speaking. When she was gone, Nina said, still looking at the fire, "There's something else, isn't there?" "Yes." "Tell me." He took a breath. Matteo Moretti did not come tonight on a whim. He came because someone in my own house told him there was a dinner. Someone inside my family called him and told him, specifically, the time and the guest list, which means that whoever it was, inside my family, wanted Matteo to come and see me humiliated tonight. Wanted him to see me without a partner. Wanted him to go home and tell his cousins that Dominic Vance has no woman, no cher heir, no wall around him. Wanted a war to begin while I was weak, your uncle. Possibly. Or closer. She turned her head. How close? He looked at the fire for a moment before he answered. My cousin Paolo, he said, the man who did not shake your hand tonight. He's been quiet for a year. Quieter than a man who loves me should be. Tonight, after Matteo left, I watched Paolo's face. He did not look surprised that Matteo had come. Every other person at that table was surprised. He wasn't. Dominic's jaw tightened very slightly. I will know for certain by Monday, but tonight, yes. I think it was Paolo. Your own cousin. Yes? Who grew up with you? Who grew up with me, yes. And he called a rival family into your grandmother's house. If I'm right, yes. Nina sat with that a long moment. And you, she said softly, what are you going to do? He did not answer that, not because he didn't know. She understood, watching his face in the firelight, that he knew exactly what he was going to do and that he was choosing not to tell her. She did not push him. She understood now that there were answers she did not want to make him give out loud. She also understood that this was the first time in her life she had sat in a warm room with a man who was about to make that kind of decision and had not been afraid of him. Tired of him, maybe. Hurt by him, yes. But not afraid. That was its own kind of change, and she would think about it later, and not tonight. I want to say something, she said. Say it. I'm not coming back. He was still. Okay. I don't care about the money. She paused. I do care about the money. I'll take the rest of it. I earned it. I'm not pretending otherwise. But I'm not coming back, Dominic. Not to your house. Not to your family. Not to your table. When I walk out of here tonight, I walk out. And if one of your men ever shows up at my restaurant again, or at my apartment, or anywhere near me, I don't care how polite he is. I don't care what envelope he's holding. The answer is no. Do you understand me? Yes. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. I understand. You used me. Yes. For something real. Not for a joke. Not for vanity. For your life. I know that. I'm not stupid. But you used me. Yes. You should have told me what I was walking into. I know. You should have told me about your uncle, about Moretti, about all of it. I know. You put me in a room where people could have hurt me, and you did not prepare me because you needed me unprepared. Yes, stop agreeing with me. I'm not trying to be clever, Nina. I'm telling you the truth. Every one of those things is true. She swallowed. Her throat hurt. Why aren't you defending yourself? Because you're right. People don't just... I know. Don't keep saying you know. All right. She laughed once, harshly, without meaning to, because it was the only thing in her body that still worked. He watched her. He did not reach for her. She was grateful for that. And he reached for her in that moment, and she would have broken. He understood that, somehow, or, more likely, he had understood a number of things about her over the last 24 hours that she had not yet understood about herself, and he was letting her catch up.
Can I ask you something? He said, after a long time. Yes. When my uncle offered you $500,000 to walk out of the house, why did you really say no? She thought about that for a long moment. I told him it was because I didn't want to be bought again. I know what you told him. That wasn't the whole reason. I know. She looked at the fire. The whole reason, she said, is that my mother worked 3 jobs so I could finish school, and she died owing more money than she had ever made in her life. And the one thing she used to tell me, the one thing, Dominic, the one thing she said to me at the end, was that it didn't matter how poor we were. It mattered that when somebody put a price on my head, I knew the number wasn't the right one. I haven't believed her in a long time. I got tired. I stopped believing a lot of things. She turned her head, and she looked him in the eye. Your uncle put a number on me tonight, and for a real second, Dominic, I want you to know this. I almost took it. Because I am tired. Because my mother's bills are still coming. Because $500,000 is enough to make a person a different person. And the only reason I didn't was because the second he said the number, I could hear her voice saying the number isn't the right one. That's all. That's the whole reason. Not honor, not loyalty to you, a dead woman in my head telling me not to sell her down. He did not speak. The fire moved. So when you say I was on your side because I decided to be, Nina said, I want you to understand I wasn't. I was on my mother's side. You were just lucky that tonight, that side happened to also be yours. Dominic looked at her for a very long moment. Nina. What? That's a better reason than I deserved. Yes, she said. It is. She stood. Her legs held her. She had been amazed all night by how they held her. She was underneath the exhaustion, beginning to understand that she had been given a body that could hold her in rooms she had not known it would need to. That was a thing she would turn over in her hands later, when she was alone. Where's the rest of the money? She said. In an account. I'll have it transferred tonight. $25,000 was delivered to your apartment this morning. The other $25,000 will be in your account by 6 a.m. Thank you. There's something else. What? He reached into his jacket and withdrew a plain envelope. He set it on the table between them. He did not push it toward her. He only put it down. What is that? An additional $50,000. As a gift. Unrelated to the contract. No conditions. You can walk out with it or leave it on the table, and either way, nothing changes between us. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking for anything at all. He paused. My uncle offered you $500,000 to hurt me. I'd like, for my own peace of mind, to have offered you at least a fraction of that to not be hurt by me. That's all. She looked at the envelope for a long time. If I take it, she said, does it mean something I don't want it to mean? No? You're sure? It means I made something in your life harder this week, and I'm trying to make one thing about it easier. That's it. She reached forward. She picked up the envelope. She did not open it. She put it in her purse, the small borrowed purse that had been selected for her by Eleanor, that had a gold clasp she did not know the brand of. And she closed it, and she stood up straight. Dominic, she said. Yes. If I ever see you again, it has to be my choice, not yours, not your people. You don't come looking. You don't send someone. You don't leave a card with my manager. If I decide someday that I want to find you, I will. And if I never decide that, then this is the last conversation we have. Yes. Say it. If I see you again, Nina, it will be because you came looking. Good. I understand. He stood. He did not try to take her hand. He did not try to touch her at all. He walked her to the front door himself, opened it for her, and stood at the threshold while his driver, a different driver than the one who had brought her, pulled the car around under the stone overhang. At the top of the step, he stopped. One last thing. What? Tonight, when Matteo Moretti walked in, and you stood up, and you introduced yourself to him before I want you to know I did not plan that. I could not have. No one could have. That was you. His gray eyes held hers. When this is all over, and my house is safe, and my cousin has answered for what he's done, and my uncle has made whatever peace he is going to make, I would like to say this to you again in a place where I am not asking you for anything. Only then, not before. Okay. Go home, Nina. I'm going. She got into the car. The driver closed the door. The house fell away behind her through the rain, and the trees closed over the drive. And she was, for the first time in almost a week, alone with herself in a moving vehicle, with $50,000 in her purse, and another 50 coming in the morning, and another 50 on top of that in an envelope she had not opened. Her hands did not shake until the gate closed behind them. Then they shook for a long time. She got home at 3 in the morning. She let herself into the apartment above the laundromat, and the dryers below were still going, and she stood in her small kitchen in her borrowed sweater and her borrowed flat shoes, and she looked at the mail on her counter. 3 bills. A collections notice. A postcard from nobody in particular. She laid the envelope Dominic had given her on the counter beside the bills. She did not open it. She went to her mother's photograph, a small framed picture on the shelf by the window, taken years ago in a kitchen smaller than this one, and she stood in front of it for a long time. "I said no," she said, out loud, to the photograph. The photograph, of course, did not answer, but something in her chest, which had been in a fist since Tuesday night at 8:08, unclenched finally, all the way this time, and she sat down on the floor of her own kitchen in her own borrowed clothes, and she put her head in her hands, and she cried. Not the kind of crying that had a decision in it, not the kind that had fear in it, just the tired, uncomplicated crying of a woman who had been asked to carry something for 6 days and had finally been allowed to put it down. She did not cry for long. When she stopped, she got up, washed her face, took off the borrowed clothes, folded them on the chair by her bed, and lay down. The dryers below her floor were still thudding. The rain against her window had eased to a soft whisper. She slept, deeply, without dreams. She did not know yet what the next week would bring. The news stories she would read, the name Paulo Vance she would see in a headline, the quiet phone call from a number she did not recognize, the way certain customers at Rossi's would begin to look at her differently, as though the city had quietly changed its mind about whether her name was worth learning. She did not know, yet, that a man in a gray suit she had once shared a hallway with would, within the month, pass her on a street corner and tip his hat to her in silence. She did not know, yet, that an envelope of $50,000 on her kitchen counter would, in the cold light of morning, feel less like a gift and more like the last page of a book she had not realized she had been reading. All she knew, as she closed her eyes, was that for the first time in a very long time, she had said no to a thing that wanted her small, and she had not disappeared when she said it. She woke up at 9:30 to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. For a half-second, she did not know where she was. She expected the cold of her old bed, the weight of her old tiredness. Instead, she was wearing the same clothes she had worn to sleep. Her face still felt tight from crying, and the apartment was quiet in a way it hadn't been in months, because the dryers below her floor had finally stopped. The phone buzzed again. She reached for it. A text from an unknown number. Funds transferred. Check when you can. Take care of yourself. D. She stared at it. She did not answer it. She put the phone face down on the bed and she walked into her kitchen in her bare feet, and she stood for a long time in front of the coffee pot. The envelope from last night was still on the counter, exactly where she had left it. In the morning light, it looked smaller. Just an envelope, not a door. She made coffee, she opened her laptop, she logged into her bank. The balance took a moment to load. When it did, she sat down slowly on the kitchen chair that had been wobbling for a year, and she looked at a number she had never in her life seen attached to her own name. $50,000, plus the $25,000 that had come through the day before, plus the change she had been living on. She scrolled to the pending transactions. There was another $25,000 marked incoming, and there was a third line further down that she had not expected. A wire transfer from an entity she did not recognize, labeled family gift, for an amount that made her breath catch. She leaned back in the chair. She did not open the envelope on the counter. She looked at it for a long moment, the plain paper, the thickness of it. And then she picked it up, walked it to the drawer where she kept her dish towels, and she put it in there, at the back, under the towels. She didn't know why. She only knew that she did not, yet, want to turn it into a number. She did not want to put a figure on the thing she had done last night. It could keep its mystery for a few more days. She went back to the kitchen table. She opened a blank document on her laptop. She started typing. A list. She did not know yet that it was a list. Pay off the hospital bills. Every last cent of them. Tomorrow. Pay rent for 3 months. Tell the landlord to fix the heat. See a dentist. That was as far as she got before she started crying again. Not the long, wrecked crying of last night. A shorter kind. The kind that comes when you finally sit down after a long walk and realize, with some quiet shock, that your feet have been hurting the entire time. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. She sent Marco a text. Not coming in today. Not coming in this week. I'll call you Friday. Sorry. He wrote back almost instantly. Are you hurt? That surprised her. She had not thought Marco capable of asking that question. No, I'm fine. I just need a week. Okay, call Friday. She set the phone down. She looked around her apartment. The water stain on the ceiling in the corner. The chipped tile behind the sink. The chair she had bought at a flea market the summer her mother was dying because she had needed a thing to be her own, even a small thing, and because the woman at the flea market had taken $7 for it without making her feel embarrassed about it. She looked at the apartment, and for the first time in 2 years, she did not feel trapped in it. She felt instead something quieter and more surprising. She felt like someone who could leave it when she chose to. That was a different feeling than she had expected money to bring. It felt like air. She did not leave right away. She stayed. She stayed for a week. She slept. She cooked. She paid her bills. She called the hospital billing office, and she paid them what she owed, in full. And she asked the woman on the phone to read the total back to her twice, because she could not, in that moment, quite believe the amount. She stood on the sidewalk outside her laundromat and cried again, briefly, when she hung up. Then she walked 3 blocks and bought herself a sandwich from a place she had always been too careful to go to, and she ate it on a bench in the small park by the canal, and she did not hurry. She did not hear from Dominic. She checked her phone, the first 2 days, more often than she wanted to admit. Then she stopped checking. By Thursday, she had almost convinced herself that it was over, that whatever had happened in the firelit study of his house had been the last of it. Then, on Friday morning, she saw the headline. It was on the news app she almost never opened. She had only tapped it because her bus was late, and she had run out of ways to pretend she wasn't waiting. Vance family. Cousin found dead in apparent dispute between organized crime factions. Authorities investigating. She stared at the photograph under the headline, a face she had not expected to recognize. The cousin Paolo, who had not shaken her hand at dinner, who had watched Matteo Moretti walk into the dining room without surprise. Her stomach went cold. She sat down on the bench of the bus shelter. She read the article. It was short, and the kind of short that meant the writer had known they were not being given the full story. Paolo Vance, 34, was found on Tuesday morning in a warehouse in the Riverfront district. The cause of death is being withheld pending investigation. Sources close to the family have declined to comment. Authorities have indicated the death may be related to an escalating dispute involving the Moretti family, though no arrests have been made. She read it twice. She did not feel triumph. She did not feel vindication. She realized, sitting on that bench with her coffee going cold in her hand, she felt tired in a complicated way, for a man who had betrayed a family that would have eaten him eventually. And she felt, under that, a colder thing. The clean, quiet understanding that the world Dominic Vance lived in was still the world Dominic Vance lived in, and that by walking out of it, she had not changed the fact that it existed. It would go on existing. People would go on dying in it. She put her phone away. She did not text him. She did not call. That night, she went back to Rossi's. Not to work. To sit. She had not been back to the restaurant since Tuesday the week before, and something in her needed to walk through the door on her own feet, on her own time, as a customer, and sit at a small two-top and order something she had served 1,000 times and had never eaten. Marco saw her come in. He came around from behind the line, wiping his hands on a clean apron for once, and he stopped at her table and did not say anything for a moment. "You're alive," he said finally. "I told you I was alive. You told me. You didn't look me in the eye when you told me." He sat down across from her, uninvited. His face, which she had only ever seen twisted by stress or contempt, was, for the first time, something closer to concerned. "Nina, are you in trouble?" "No." "Tell me the truth." "I am telling you the truth. I'm not in trouble. I was in trouble for a week. I'm not in trouble anymore." He studied her for a moment. "He came in here," Marco said more quietly.
Tuesday. You know who? I know. He told me before he left that if I docked your pay or said one wrong word to you after that night, he would make sure I never worked in this city again. He said it the way a man says a thing he has already decided. Nina's breath caught. I didn't ask him to do that. I know you didn't. That's how I know he meant it. Marco's mouth twisted, though it was not cruelty this time. Nina, I've not been good to you, have I? Marco, it's fine. It's not fine. I know it's not fine. I treat the whole staff the same way, which means I treat you worse than you deserved, because you were better than the others. You were the best one I had. I should have told you that a year ago. Instead, I docked you 15 minutes when you were 10 minutes early. I know what I was doing. I was scared of you leaving, so I made leaving feel too hard. He looked at his hands. They were scarred in 12 places, the way any longtime line cook's hands are. I'm telling you now because I don't want you to go without me saying it once. Am I going? Aren't you? She looked at him, the man who had called her late in spirit on a Tuesday a lifetime ago. Yes, she said, I'm going. I don't know where yet, but I'm not coming back to the floor, Marco. I can't. I know. I've known all week. He stood. He offered her his hand. An awkward thing, a formal thing, the kind of handshake a man like Marco did not know how to perform gracefully. She took it. He squeezed hers once, firmly, and let go. Dinner's on the house. Order whatever you want. Don't eat the lasagna. Tomas burned the sauce this morning, and I had to stretch it. The risotto is good. Nina. Yes. Be careful. I'm trying. Try harder than that. You deserve to be careful. And he walked away, back to his line, and she did not see him again before she left. She did not go home immediately after. She walked. She walked all the way down to the river. The wind off the water was cold and she had worn too light a jacket, but she did not care. She walked past the docks where she had been told, as a child, not to walk alone after dark. She walked past the old bakery where her mother had, once, bought her a pastry with sugar on top for no reason, just because it was a Tuesday. She walked past the public library where she had spent most of the summer she was 14, because the library had air conditioning and her mother's apartment did not. She walked until she had put enough of the city between herself and Rossi's that she could no longer feel the restaurant like a hook in her back. Then she went home and she slept. The weeks that came after were quieter than she had expected. She had thought, in the days after the dinner, that something dramatic would happen, that a car would come, that a man would knock on her door, that her phone would ring with a number she was not supposed to recognize. None of that happened. The money was just money. It sat in her account and paid her bills and did not ask for anything in return. She moved, at the end of the month, out of the apartment above the laundromat. She found a small one-bedroom on the north side of the city, in a building that had an elevator and a working boiler and a door she could lock behind her without jiggling it. She bought a bed. Not a luxurious one. A bed that was hers, that did not sag in the middle, that had not belonged to anyone before her. That first night in the new apartment, she lay on her back in the dark and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of a new building settling around her, and she thought, this is what it feels like to have chosen a place. She took a class. Just one, at a small community college 10 minutes from her new apartment. A bookkeeping class. She had been curious ever since her mother died about the way money moved, not about making it exactly, but about keeping it, about not losing it the way her mother had lost it, about understanding it well enough that the next time someone handed her a thick envelope, she would know precisely what it was worth. The class was boring in a way she found comforting. The instructor was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain. Nina was, by a wide margin, the best student in the room. She surprised herself with how much she liked that. She did not think about Dominic Vance every day, but she thought about him some days. She thought about him the first time she walked past an art gallery on a Saturday afternoon and almost, out of reflex, walked in before she remembered that she did not actually work there, had never actually worked there, had only been told, for 4 days last winter, that she did. She thought about him once when she heard a man on the bus use the word fragile in a sentence that had nothing to do with him. She thought about him once when she saw in a store window a dress that was almost the right shade of blue, not quite, not exactly his blue, but close. And she stood in front of the window for a long moment before she walked on. She did not seek him out. She had told him she wouldn't. And then, on a cold Thursday in March, 6 weeks after the dinner,
He came to her, not at her apartment. He honored that at least. She saw him instead at the community college, of all places. She had just come out of her class with her textbook under her arm and her cheeks red from the walk across the parking lot, and he was standing beside a black car parked at the curb. Not the long, silent kind of black car from that night, a smaller one, more ordinary. He was wearing a dark coat and no tie. His hair was a little longer than it had been. He looked, she thought with some surprise, tired, not weak tired, but the tired of a man who had spent 6 weeks doing something difficult and had done it. He did not step forward. He waited. She stopped on the sidewalk about 10 feet from him. Dominic? Nina, you said you wouldn't come looking. I know. Then why are you here? Because I made a promise that the next time I said certain things to you, it would be in a place where I wasn't asking you for anything, and I'd like, if you'll let me, to keep that promise. She stood very still. Students flowed past her on both sides, backpacks bumping her elbows, nobody looking twice. How did you find me? I didn't have anyone follow you. I want to say that first. I sent no one. I watched you from no window. I promised you that, and I meant it. Then how? You wrote a check 3 weeks ago to the hospital on Carver Street, and the hospital is one my family has, quietly, supported for 30 years. Your name passed across a desk. An accountant I trust noticed the name. He mentioned it to me. That is how I know where you made a payment. That is how I know you paid every cent of what you owed. I don't know where you live. I don't know where you shop. I didn't follow you here. I came here because I learned you were taking a class, and I asked the college, quite publicly, when your class ended. Nothing I did to find you was done in secret. I want you to know that before anything else. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Okay, she said, may I walk with you? How far? As far as you want to walk. I'll leave when you tell me to. She hesitated, then she nodded once. They began to walk. Not arm in arm, not even close to it. He walked on the street side of the sidewalk, the way a certain kind of man had been taught to do a long time ago, and he kept his hands in his coat pockets, and he did not rush her. They made it to the corner before either of them spoke. Paolo? Nina said. It was him. Yes. What happened? That's a question I won't answer honestly. Not because I'm hiding it from you, because if I tell you, you carry it, and I won't ask you to carry that. All right. I'm sorry. For Paolo? For all of it. For putting you in that house. For the choice my uncle made you face. For what was asked of you in a hallway by a woman you should never have had to meet. I am sorry for all of it, Nina. I have had 6 weeks to think about exactly how sorry I am, and the list is longer than I thought it would be. She looked sideways at him as they walked. Your uncle, still alive, still in the family, still in the chair by the fire. We are not enemies. We are in some ways closer than we were. Certain things have been said between us that can be said only once in a lifetime. He was, when he made you that offer, acting out of what he thought was a duty to the family. I believe that now. I did not, at the time. He paused. He asks after you. He what? He asks after you. Not often. Once, maybe twice a month, he will say your name. Not in a warm way, not in a cruel way. Only the way a man says the name of a person he is still thinking about. I do not answer him. He does not ask me to answer. It is only something he says to the air to see if the air has any news. Nina did not know what to do with that. And Bianca, she said, married 2 weeks ago to the man she left me for. Her mother cried through the entire ceremony, I'm told. They are living in the south of France. She writes me once a month, a short, polite letter. Last month she asked after you as well. She did not say your name. She only said the woman from dinner. She asked if you were well. I wrote back and told her you were. Were you lying? I hope I wasn't. I want to ask. They walked a half block in silence. I am well, Nina said finally. Yes, I am well. Good. Another half block. Dominic. Yes. Why are you really here? He slowed. She slowed with him. They stopped at a small stone planter on the corner where a crocus had, against all common sense, decided to bloom in the cold. He looked at the crocus for a moment as though it were an argument he was assembling. When I came to you in that restaurant 6 weeks ago, he said, I was a man managing a crisis. I was losing my family. I was losing the one piece of ground I had fought for since I was 19. I came looking for a prop, and I found you. I have told you that already. I am not going to pretend tonight that it started any differently than it started. Okay, but in the 6 weeks since then, and I understand how this will sound, and I understand you have every right to walk away from it as soon as I say it. In the 6 weeks since then, I have been running my family in a different way. Quieter, more controlled, fewer fires. The people I answer to inside the house are surprised, I think, by the way I have been making decisions. I have had one of the steadiest 6 weeks I have had in 11 years, and I have spent a great deal of time thinking about why that is. She waited. It is because, he said, for the first time since my father died, I sat across a table from a person who told me the truth. A person who did not want anything from me and therefore did not bend the truth to protect it. You said 3 things to me in my study that I have not been able to put down. You said I was lucky your mother was on my side. You said I had used you, and that you knew it, and that you were going to leave anyway. And you said if you ever came back, it would be your choice, not mine. Those 3 sentences have sat at the bottom of me for 6 weeks, Nina. I have been asking myself every day whether I could build a version of what I do where more people spoke to me the way you did. I have decided I can. I have decided I have to. I am not. I am not the man my uncle thinks I am, and I am not the man my father was. And I have spent too many years trying to split the difference between those 2 ghosts. That is over. She was quiet. All right, she said. I did not come here to ask you to come back to that house. That house is a thing you are owed the right never to see again. I did not come to ask you to be anyone's girlfriend, fake or otherwise. I did not come to ask you anything at all that a man should not be able to ask a woman on a public sidewalk, in daylight, with no pressure of any kind. Then what did you come to ask? He turned very slightly to face her. I am rebuilding some of what I do, he said. The legal parts of it. My family has businesses. Real businesses. Boring ones, galleries and small vineyards, and a shipping firm in the north. The sort of thing that pays taxes and has quarterly reports. My father used to run them as a cover. My uncle treats them as decorations. I have been, in the last 6 weeks, spending more time with them. I am trying to make them a thing, not a cover. A thing. A real thing that I could, eventually, stand behind without flinching. I need people inside those companies who are not my family. People who owe nothing to the old house. People who are clever and who are honest and who know specifically what it feels like to be spoken to as though they did not matter, and who will therefore not do that to the people who work for them. I am offering a position inside one of those businesses, a real position, a salary that reflects the work and not my guilt. I would like you to consider it. It's a Yitzuham. She blinked. Dominic, I know. You want me to work for you. I want you to work for one of the companies my family owns. You would not report to me. You would report to a woman named Delia Hargrove, who runs the office side of the shipping firm, who is 61 years old and who has in her time fired 2 of my cousins. She does not like anyone. She might eventually like you. I would not see you often. You would not have to see me at all if you did not want to. Why me? Because you paid attention. That night, in that dining room, you looked at everyone in the room and you paid attention. I don't mean politely. I mean the way a person pays attention when they have had to survive by reading other people all their life. That is not a common skill. It is not a skill you can hire. Most of the people who have it in this city are very tired waitresses and very tired nurses and very tired mothers, and almost none of them are ever asked to put that skill to work in a place where it is paid for properly. I would like to ask you to put it to work in a place where it is paid for properly. Betsy Yichiman nights. She was silent for a long time. This is a trap, she said finally. Isn't it? No. Dominic, Nina, listen to me. If you say no today, you never hear from me again. That is not a threat. That is the offer, made clean. You keep every cent that has been given to you. You keep the apartment, the class, the life you are making. I disappear from your story and I do not come back. If you say yes, the terms are the ones I have described. I am not buying a girlfriend. I am not buying a spy. I am not buying a favor. I am trying clumsily to pay for a skill
And I'm telling you honestly that I am paying for it, partly because I learned it exists when I watched you use it on my behalf, and I owe the discovery of it to you. That's all. That's all it is.
She looked at him. She looked at the crocus, at the corner of the planner, pushing up against all sense through the last cold. She thought about the envelope in the back of her drawer, which she had still, 6 weeks later, not opened. She thought about her mother, who had told her that the number was never the right one. She thought very carefully about the difference between a number being offered for her silence and a number being offered for her work. She thought about the fact that those two things had almost never, in the history of her life, been offered to her in the right ratio. I need to think about it, she said. Of course. I need to talk to someone I trust. I don't even know who that is yet. I will figure it out. Good. I might say no. I understand. I might say no and change my mind 6 months later. Then I will answer the phone in 6 months. I might say no and never change my mind. Then that is the answer. She looked at him. Dominic. Yes. The last time I said no to an offer that had your uncle's name attached to it, I was terrified the whole way home in the car. Did you know that? I guessed. I am not terrified this time. I'm glad. I don't know yet whether that means I trust you more or whether I trust myself more. I'm only telling you because I want you to know the difference matters to me. It matters to me too. She nodded. She turned to go. Then she stopped, and she turned back and she looked at him for one more long moment. If I say yes, she said, I work on my terms. I pick my hours. I get to quit. Any day, any hour, I get to quit, and nobody calls me afterwards. I get to say, at any meeting, anything I actually think, including about you, and I do not get punished for it. And if I ever once, Dominic, find out that my being there is being used to keep some other woman in a hallway somewhere in your life from getting hurt by somebody who should have been told no a long time ago, I leave that day. And I take with me every piece of paper I have ever touched, and I give it to whichever enemy of yours seems most useful at the time. Do you understand? His mouth moved. Not a smile. Not quite. Something more serious than a smile. Nina, he said, you have just described, almost word for word, the terms my grandmother set with my grandfather in 1954, before she agreed to marry him. I have the letter in a drawer. I will have it sent to you if you would like to see it. Your grandmother? Yes. Did he honor the terms? Not always. Not at first. He learned. Did she stay? Yes. She stayed. On her terms. She died in her own bed with a view of her own garden, and she outlived him by 9 years, and she was, by every account anyone ever gave of her, the person he most feared disappointing in his life. Nina let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Okay, she said. Okay. Not yes, just okay. I'm thinking about it. You will hear from me when I decide. If you do not hear from me in 3 months, the answer is no, and you do not come looking. Understood. Goodbye, Dominic. Goodbye, Nina. She walked away. She did not turn back. She walked all the way to the bus stop on the corner of Elm and 7th, and she got on the bus, and she rode it home, and she watched the city go by the window as though she had never seen it before. The small man at the corner stand selling roasted nuts, the woman at the crosswalk in a bright yellow coat yelling at her 2 kids in a way that was underneath only love. The light changing again. That night, in her new apartment, she opened the drawer with the dish towels. She took out the envelope from 6 weeks ago. She opened it, finally. She counted the money. She had expected $50,000. It was $55,000. The extra $5,000 was in a small banded stack of its own, with a handwritten note clipped to it. The note said, for Celeste. She spent 3 hours on your hands and you never got a chance to tip her. I thought you might want to send it along with a note of your own. D. She read the note 3 times. She sat at her kitchen table and she wrote, in her own handwriting, a short letter to a woman named Celeste, whose last name she did not know, thanking her for her work, and she tucked $5,000 inside it, and she addressed it to Dominic Vance without any other words, and she dropped it in the mail the next morning. She took the class. She finished the class with an A. She took another class, then a third. 2 months after the sidewalk conversation, she called the number Dominic had left her. She did not say hello when he picked up. She said, I have conditions. 3 of them. I'm going to say them, and you're going to say yes or no to each one before I agree to anything. Go ahead. She said them. He listened. He said yes to all 3. He did not push. He did not bargain. He did not try to soften any of it. When she was done, he said only, "When would you like to start?" "Monday." "Monday," he said. "Delia will meet you at 9. She will be hostile. That is how she is. Do not take it personally." "I won't." "And Nina." "Yes." "Welcome." She hung up the phone. She stood in her kitchen for a long time. The windows were open. Spring had begun to loosen the air outside. Somewhere a child was shouting in the street about a bicycle. She thought, not for the first time, about her mother. She thought about the woman she had been before a man in a diner booth had told her she was nobody. She thought about the woman she had been that same night, lying in bed with a phone number on a plain white card, deciding to press call. She thought about the woman she had been in a blue dress in a hallway full of portraits, refusing $500,000 with a dead woman's voice in her head. She thought about the woman she was going to be on Monday at 9 a.m., walking into an office where somebody would be paid to be hostile to her for the first 15 minutes, and where, after those 15 minutes, she would begin to learn a trade. She did not know how any of this would turn out. She did not know whether Delia Hargrove would fire her in a month, or whether the shipping firm would, 2 years from now, still exist, or whether Dominic Vance would, by some turn, end up with his name in a headline harder than his cousin's had been. She did not know whether Matteo Moretti would forgive a slight she had not meant to give him, or whether Cesare Vance would, someday, pass her again in a hallway and ask her a different question with a different answer. She did not know whether she would ever love anyone or be loved in a way that did not come with a contract at the start of it. She only knew this, and she said it to herself quietly, out loud, because she had begun to say certain things out loud to herself in the new apartment where there was nobody to overhear. She said, "The trick, Nina, is not to become invisible again just because the world stopped being dangerous for 5 minutes. The trick is to remember who you were the night you said no. And not to sell her back, not even cheaply, not even for a kind man." The wind moved through the open window. The curtains lifted. She closed her eyes. Somewhere in the city, a waitress she did not know was beginning her evening shift at a restaurant on a street Nina had never walked down. That waitress was tying an apron. That waitress was tired. That waitress did not, yet, know her own name was worth learning. Nina could not reach her. She could not reach most of them. But she thought, with a small private fierceness that surprised her, that the one thing she could do from here on was to not be one of them anymore, and to remember, on every day she wasn't, that she very easily could have been, and almost was, and had been for most of her life, and had been pulled out of it not by a man, but by a moment in a marble hallway when she had heard a long-gone voice say, "The number isn't the right one," and had believed it, finally, for the first time. She opened her eyes. She went to the drawer. She took out a clean notebook, a cheap one, yellow cover, the kind she had used to keep track of tips. And on the first page, in her own handwriting, she wrote, "Monday, 9 a.m., Hargrove." So, don't apologize for being early. She put the notebook on the counter next to her keys. And then, because she was a person who had spent a long time not letting herself rest, and had only recently learned that she was allowed to, she made herself a cup of tea, and she sat by the window, and she watched the light change on the building across the street until the sun went down. The world outside her window kept doing what it had always done. The buses, the shouting children, the wind in the awnings, the slow accumulation of lives nobody would ever write down. She was a small part of it. She understood that now in a way she had not understood it before. She had been nobody for a long time, and she had almost been killed for being nobody. And she had almost taken $500,000 to go on being nobody in some other city. And instead she was sitting on an ordinary evening in an apartment she had chosen, drinking a cup of tea she had paid for with money she had earned by keeping her word, looking forward, with some small private steadiness, to a Monday morning meeting with a woman who had been told to be hostile. It was not a big life, not yet, but it was hers. And in a world built to make women like her forget they were allowed to have one, that, she understood finally, as the last light left the sky over the rooftops, was the bigger thing. Not the man, not the money, not the dress, not the dinner, not the hallway, not the no she had said in it. The bigger thing was the quiet Monday morning after, when she would get up, make coffee, put on clothes she had chosen, and walk into a room as a person who had decided for herself
what her name was worth.
She finished her tea, she washed the cup, she turned off the light. And Nina Carter, who had been invisible for a long time and would not be again, went to bed.